Setting up. Get that in there. Um, let's record. All right, there we are. Look at that. I made it work. Sorry about that, guys. I'm gonna have to do a quick little. Let's just shut that down real quick. I set up this massive new hard drive onto my computer, so now my computer is like moving at I don't know, a mile a minute here. Welcome everyone to Hash Church, season 11, episode 50. Holy shit, we've damn near done 50 of these here this year. So I'm just going to get the crew in because they're all in the old YouTube channel. Something happened today with the stream key when I did my edit, actually last night when I set it up, or 2 nights ago. So my apologies, but I will get things started here right away. Just want to make sure everyone is in the room. We're going to start, as we always do, by thanking our sponsors, man. I mean, listen, I don't want to say we couldn't do it without them because I did do it without them for 10 years, but it has been very helpful to have the few sponsors that we have had. I think we've had about 20 over the course of this last year, so shout out to all of them. But a really big shout out to the ones who've stuck around and the ones who've really stayed loyal and true to Hash Church. So as always, we're going to start out with thanking our good friends over at the Press Club, trusted by top hash makers from around the world since 2016. The Press Club is your one-stop shop for award-winning solventless gear, from press bags to wash bags to presses to vessels. You'll find pretty much everything you need from wash to press. We're, of course, big fans of the Press Club and what they're doing in the community, so we're excited to have them on board as an official sponsor for Hash Church. They've got the made in the USA, patented pink stitch, zero blowout guarantee, small family-owned business, and free expedited shipping over $75. International shipping is available upon request. You can visit them at www.thepressclub.co and use the code HashChurch to take 10% off your purchase. And I do urge you to go over and support those guys. They've been nothing but supportive of us. Why wouldn't we support them back? Also wanted to thank, as always, Puffco. Elevate your sessions with the Puffco's cutting edge lineup, starting with the innovative Pivot, a pocket-sized dab pen that delivers the full rig experience on the go, featuring a quick release 3D chamber for sweet, sweet flavor and a real-time temperature control with 4 heat presets and haptic feedback. For epic group rips, dive into the Puffco Peak Pro, powered by revolutionary 3D XL bowl technology that offers a 78% larger chamber for 2 times more vapor. Even heating from the sides to preserve terpenes, and an XL joystick for fuller loads with less reclaim. And don't miss the new Proxy, the modular portable powerhouse with 4 precision heat settings. Fast 90-minute charging, boost mode for intense hits, and an easy disassembly for seamless cleaning. Perfect really for any adventure. Support Puffco's game-changing innovations by heading over to www.puffco.com or following at Puffco on Instagram today. I gotta say, I haven't carried my rig around since I got the trio of those 3 units, the Pivot, the Proxy, and the Peak Pro with the 3D XL bowl. That ended me carrying my glass rig, torch, dab right, banger basket. All of this ridiculous shit can just be turned into one little electronic unit. Do I dab at home out of a rig? Sure, I still have mine set up. I love rig dabbing. I'm not saying that Puffco replaces it, but it certainly does on the go for me. Last and finally, certainly not least, we got to shout out my company, Bubble Bags. We do stand out as the premier choice for water extraction, and it's no surprise why. We are the original innovators. We set the standard for quality and performance. Crafted with durability in mind, our bags come with a lifetime warranty, ensuring you're covered for years of consistent use. Our team behind Bubble Bag takes pride in our pioneering legacy, backing every product with unwavering confidence and a commitment to excellence, making us the trusted go-to for enthusiasts and professionals alike. Seeking top-tier hash extraction results, you can check us out at www.bubblebag.com. Use the code HashChurch10 for a 10% discount, but honestly, I think everything is discounted 60% over there right now, so get on over there before the holiday sale ends and support us. And in the meantime, I'm back. I feel a lot better. Yeah. Last week was a little bit rough on me, not gonna lie. a little bit rough. That Vegas aftermath damn near killed me, but I do feel pretty good now. I'm not gonna lie. And I think we're gonna get into it today. I have a feeling it's gonna be an emotional day, just from going into the chat for a short period of time. Yeah, lots going on in the world of cannabis right now, obviously, with the administration down there flirting with a Schedule 3. I don't exactly know what that means because Schedule 1 seems to be complete and total bullshit. I mean, it's available everywhere. You can just buy it at stores throughout the US. Fuck, for the longest time, you guys had it at gas stations through the Farm Bill. And so I think a lot of people think when this Schedule 3 thing happens, everything's going to revert back and we're going to lose all access. And I have a hard time believing that Pandora's box can be closed again, but we will see. We've got some smart people coming on today to discuss such things. And I guess in the meantime, I will welcome Mr. Caleb Chen to the room, as well as Mr. Ryan Lee, aka Chimera.
Thank you for having us before the smart people get here.
Well, I'm always the least smart person, so I like to start it off. Uh-oh, a
Here
smart
we
guy
go.
just came
That's
in.
my guy disappeared.
There we
Damn,
go.
that was early too. It's like you said smart people, and he came in right away holding a fucking molecule. Jesus Christ.
Who, me?
Who, me? Yes, you.
I was gonna say I exclusively use bubble bags for making hash. So thank you to Fresh Hetties and the
Shit.
Bubble Bag Company.
Dude, you were one
They
of the
are the
first
best.
people I
They are the
sold bubble
original.
bags to.
I know. I got the original Charson hand sewn set. Um, but I've been along for the journey and watched the innovation, and there's no doubt that you took that concept and expanded it into something really special. So have to do the hat tip to Marcus. How are you, Mr. Sheldon? Dr. Sheldon, I'm sorry.
Oh, all good. Doing well. Doing well.
What do you
Good to
think
see
about
you. It
this?
seems like the light is shining behind your brilliantly lit head.
What do you think about this whole potential scheduling shuffle that's going down, or
Oh,
is
thanks
this
for
also
asking.
just a big attempt for Donald Trump to pump stocks?
Uh, thanks for asking. Well, say I said it before. I'll say it again. Moving a plant that people can grow themselves to Schedule 3 is absolutely fucking ridiculous, right? So people are going to rely on a doctor's prescription to go buy some MSO grown mids at Walgreens. I don't think so. The trap market is going to win all day long. And
But do
so
people
deschedule
rely
is the
on
right
that
thing. And
now?
I don't believe that rescheduling to Schedule 3, I think it's dead on arrival because pharmaceutical companies, which are the ones that are FDA registered to sell Schedule 3 substances, aren't ready to do this from the get go. And so I think the MSOs hope that they're just going to be takeover targets so the pharmaceutical companies could spread their GLP or GMP blanket over the top of these MSOs and, yeah, just grow marginal weed, which isn't, yeah. I think it's going to fail. And what Mojave said last week, too, was really potent, which is that unlike previous prohibitions, there hasn't never been a $30 billion industry that they were trying to snuff out. Granted, legacy market is huge and everything, but at the end of the day, these are tax paying jobs by people who are, yeah, putting dollars into the pockets of the lobbyists that are in DC. And I think I'll just finish on the note that it's interesting in the beverage sector, right? Ryan, it's like the beverage sector that's on the distiller side, which is it in Mitch McConnell's back pocket, the distillers, the bourbon people, people who make spirits for a living. They look at cannabis beverages as being, a threat to them. So every time someone pops a cannabis beverage, that's one less shot of booze or beer that they're going to drink, right? So those people want to see it go away, but the distributors who are already entrenched in this network, who have the distribution supply chains and the bottling companies and the factories, to them, nanoemulsion of cannabinoid is just a functional ingredient. that they want to put into their products because people want it. For me, for one, I love it the fact that I can go to a party store or an alcohol store and buy, liters of vodka and stuff like that, but also buy some cannabis beverages for my party guests who choose to, consume such products. So I think it's great that it's kind of being normalized in that way, but it's so interesting how within the big beverage itself, the distillers are against it, but the distributors totally want it. So
I
Yeah,
have
well,
a
it's such a stupid thing too, because the view that people are using THC at the expense of alcohol is just completely wrong, right? I mean, the new generation of kids that are coming up, they don't want alcohol, or they're not using alcohol to the same degree as our generation and older generations did. Um,
well, but don't you think if they go into an establishment that's serving a THC beverage and myself, I would probably choose a THC beverage. I'd probably also grab a stout or an IPA, but I mean, I'd
you
be
might,
curious, and
yeah,
I'm
you might.
sure that in a certain population, people are choosing a THC based beverage over alcohol for the buzz, right?
There are some. There's no doubt about that. But I think my point I was trying to make is that they are different streams now, and there's a lot of the younger generation of kids that don't use alcohol, right? And so I would argue that they're not the same population. Sure, there is a shared population where some people might use it one over the other, but I think that a lot of the kids that just don't use alcohol the way that our generations did, right? So I
Well, I
think it's a
think the
little bit
thing
different.
that's made the beverages possible, Ryan, and this is kind of cool. I know a little bit about this. Is the nano emulsification technology? Like about 5 years ago, it was somewhat trivial to make a nano emulsion, but to make one that not only is stable and holds its potency while the can is sitting on the shelf, but also one that doesn't impact taste or flavor. My God, if you were tasting beverages like 5 years ago, they tasted horrible, especially the ones that maintained potency. They tasted like Listerine or some shit like that. Had a
Keith
really
Cola didn't.
medicinal
Keith Cola
bit.
tasted the same 5 years ago as it did today, and they're the number one beverage in the U.S.
Well,
Yeah,
I can point
Hands
you to
sure,
down.
Marcus.
beverages that have little to no aftertaste at all. I know that nano
Yeah.
emulsion that we developed had no bitter aftertaste, had no issue with stability, and up to like 50 milligrams, we had good stability in the can. The canning process itself, Marcus, is a little bit abusive to some of these formulations, and
Oh, I
you know,
know. I was just at the Keith Cola facility in Vegas. I went and met with the owners there,
oh,
and
cool.
they seem to be quite excited about federal legalization. I did want to make one point about your stuff because what you said, I would agree with everything you said, Dr. Mark, if it meant that, like currently, Schedule 3. Well, right now it's Schedule 1. You're not allowed to. It's an abuse. It's what is it? A high level for abuse, no medical value.
Yeah,
Yet it's available all throughout the U.S. as a recreational and a medical drug. So we know that the current regulation of Schedule 1 is not being enforced whatsoever.
right,
And
right.
so, like Tony Neg said in the chat room, Schedule 3 doesn't mean they're gonna put everything back in Pandora's box and try to control it. I suspect maybe they'll do a little bit with medical, but it's not going to change the way cannabis, like they just can't put it back in the box. It's not going to make it like way worse, in my opinion.
Well,
It's the closest thing to decriminalization. Schedule 3 is the last point of removing it completely from schedule, whereas Schedule
yeah.
1
There's
is the
Schedule
worst.
5.
Is there? Yeah, Schedule 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's schedules that are down there, but the
Think we'll
point
go to
is
Schedule
that
5 from 3?
it's not dangerous, so it doesn't need to be controlled. And I think
No,
that's
but
going
it's
to be
currently
that's
Schedule
going to be the
1.
wild card
It's
where
currently
Trump. I
Schedule
think
1.
what Trump can instruct RFK to do, and I believe there's legal precedence for this, Marcus, is that they can have it doesn't even need to be by presidential order. I think, don't quote me on this. I'm not a legal scholar, constitutional scholar, but I
Me
think the
neither.
Department of HHS, from a letter from RFK himself, can basically remove it from the schedule by making an exception. They did so with caffeine. So caffeine, we talked about this, I think, last week. Caffeine is an active ingredient of a migraine medicine and some weight loss drugs. But in order for like Mountain Dew and Coca Cola and 5 Hour Energy Drink to be able to fortify their products for caffeine, they had to like carve it out. So I think that could be maybe what's coming on Monday is some kind of carve out. I don't know. Again, like I would think that what the easiest thing to do, because rescheduling is so problematic because there are no dispensaries that are FDA approved to dispense
Right, but it's Schedule
a
1
Schedule
right
3
now, Dr.
substance.
Mark. It's Schedule
Yeah.
1, and there's dispensaries all over the country. Are you not seeing that?
Yeah,
Under
no, I
Schedule
get
1.
it. So those dispensaries are regulated under state laws.
That's right.
So there
But
are
they
state laws that
exist
regulate
under
those.
Schedule
This is an
1.
effort to do something across the entire country.
Is it?
Which again, given
No.
the patchwork
No,
of
I don't
state
think
laws
so
that
either.
exist.
I don't
don't
think
think
so
it is.
either.
Can
Yeah.
I
think
just
that's
jump
the-
in just
I think
for
that's
3
the
seconds?
assumption that makes Mark's points valid. Without that assumption, they collapse because we're currently under a much worse schedule,
Yeah.
and it's available everywhere.
So I just had
Right,
like I
under state
posted
law.
something on LinkedIn
Under
the other
state
day,
law.
and I
That's the important thing, right? So what they're trying to do is harmonize a federal law so it's equal in all the states.
I don't
right?
think
Right.
so.
so it
Go
appears
ahead,
like
Colin.
that, right, Dr. Mark? But like I posted something the other day that I'll stand on. This is not legalization. This is a balance sheet test. And what I mean by that is that those that have the money right now are getting it shot, and it's only a handful of these operators that are getting a shot at this to do sort of what Mark is saying, but get their hands and their tentacles into these channels to in hopes that if the balance sheet works, meaning they generate enough ROI and the tax dollars ensue from this, and this is some really deep stuff, those donors to those political parties then get in the room and they get to dictate what happens next in terms of a legalization. But right now, they have to prove themselves as an industry, as a business. And I agree with Marcus. Like it's a lot of false narratives are being presented on the guise of legalization. Show me where the language shows you where that says legalization, because I personally don't see
No.
it.
Well, listen, this is the one thing that made me feel good, like we were moving in the right direction. And I'm like Dr. Mark. I'm not a bloody, person that studies this stuff for a living. I really don't know shit about it. My opinion matters very little. I will admit that. But I saw Kevin Sabet losing his fucking mind on X the other day over this Schedule 3, and it made me feel like it was the right direction to go. I was like, this motherfucker hates this. We gotta go forward. I don't know
Yeah.
much about that guy, but I know he's a pretty big piece of shit.
I really
Yeah,
wish
and Mark, I feel like a lot of things you said is right though. Like you're calling it right. Like, the industry in terms of beverage and ingestibles, call it. There's a like I understand what you're saying, Ryan. Like there's a new gen. I think that always exists. Like there's always a sub, culture that's going to be like, I don't drink. It's just not what we do. But I do believe that there is a whole subclass of people that do use substance, and it is kind of going in essentially up, doing an upwelling of the alcohol industry. Like look at how Southern Glazer just bought into New York City. Like they own Brooklyn now. That would have never happened from a distribution point of view if sales weren't so far down, to Mark's point.
so.
So there's a lot of these like big plays that have happened that
Right, but
Mark,
there's
I think, is kind of like talking about, right? And I think he's not wrong because I see it too. I'm just talking specifically United States because that's my lens on it. But it seems like there is people that do want another choice. And when given that choice in the same aisle, they will go towards a cannabinoid forward drink.
So we've had a lot of stuff happen in the last month, 2 months, call it. One of them being the redefinition of hemp under the Farm
Yeah,
Bill when they reopened
sure.
the government. And so I think like relying on what's happened in the last 2 years and just saying, kind of saying, oh, the status quo of the last 2-3 years has been this, that it's going to
Sure.
continue. That's like totally a false assumption,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
agree.
and, and I got to start like again. I want to start this by admitting, everybody knows or people that watch this know I'm Canadian. I'm not American. I don't have a big. I'm not incredibly informed about this, and so I rely on friends that are more informed. And I had a
Sure.
conversation with Etienne. It's a shame that he's not here because he had a really good take on this whole thing. And the one thing that he reminded me is that the 10th Amendment applies when it comes to cannabis, and the 10th Amendment is the separation of state and Fed powers, right? Everything
Yeah.
that was written in the Constitution is under the Fed. Everything else falls to the state level.
Mhm.
And obviously, there's nothing about cannabis in the Fed, right, in the Constitution. So this is while it is a shift in federal policy, nothing
Mhm.
changes in regards to like this doesn't legalize anything in states that don't have a medical or state regulated program, right? Like
Sure.
they will fall back under state regulation, and with the redefinition of hemp under the Farm Bill or post Farm Bill in this refunding bill, the government funding bill that was just passed, all of these beverages that we're talking about they will become illegal. Right, because they're greater than whatever it is, 4 milligrams per container, or 0.4 milligrams
If
per.
that
0.4
still
milligrams.
stands, right, on the right. So like there's
Right,
been a
but all
couple
we
new
can do is
bills
talk about
introduced.
how is it
Yeah.
written today, right? And of course there's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to
No,
be
you're totally right. So
right.
so
So of
yeah,
course
let's
there's going
talk
to be
about
all
that for a
these.
sec.
Of
Yeah.
course there's going to be all these court challenges that and lawsuits that happen with regard to what happened a couple of months ago with regards to the redefinition of hemp.
Sure.
But that's all yet to play out. All we can do is talk about the way it is today, right? And Etienne also mentioned some other things that I thought were actually really quite insightful and important in this whole thing. I follow this lady on Twitter, and she's been talking about how the movement of cannabis products into Schedule 3 will allow people that are in state hospital facilities to access cannabis where they can't currently, right? Because cannabis being on Schedule 1 prevents these people with these very severe disorders. A lot of hospitals take the stance that no, it's a Schedule 1 drug. You can't have it in our hospital, right? So people that could benefit from even like cannabis oils or like the edible oils, they can't access those drugs while they're in these state facilities.
So talk to me about Sativex and what, David had done and how that, and Dr. Mark, chime in here a little bit because I'd love to hear your thoughts on, because it feels to me like we have access if those are the two, examples here, A and B,
And they're
why.
FDA regulated, so of course they can be used. But then you're on
Right,
the
but I'm
market.
I'm just I'm trying to open up the conversation of like why aren't there more, and this is maybe directed to Dr. Mark, he maybe knows more about this than I. Why aren't there more approved drugs?
Well, it
Well,
costs
this
a
is
billion
it.
dollars
It,
for
it
it costs them a
yeah.
billion dollars to get that thing
Well, lay
for
it
a month
out,
in there.
like I think
Yeah.
it's important for
So
everyone to hear this, That's why I'm asking the question. I understand why, I just think it's important to talk about it.
yeah. So it's $1 billion to basically get a drug approved through the FDA process, give or take, and it
Yeah.
could take up to 10 years, even though that they have tons of things that they can bridge in terms of talks and stuff like that. But it's interesting, Colin. Were you on the episode when Wendy and or Colton was on? Yeah. So Colton's formulation is a 1-to-1, right? And I don't know if you remember, but Russo was here, but he left the chat before we could pose the question.
Yeah, I
Is
remember
that
you asked the question. He
yeah?
had left
Would
before that. Yeah.
so Colton is a classic case of Crohn's, and I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know much about the symptomology or at least how to treat Crohn's, but it sounds like through a lot of trial work that Colton has arrived at this 1-to-1 formulation. So the reason why I'm bringing this back up for discussion is because you mentioned Sativex. So Sativex having approval in other countries, including in the EU and elsewhere, they do have, a safety package that shows that stuff, like we know, most of these cannabinoids are, notoriously not toxic, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, so I think, so to answer your question, Colin, it
Yeah.
would take a company to basically take and NDA is what we call a new drug application approved by the FDA to then basically repeat what we already know, which is that a 1-to-1 formulation will work to treat Crohn's, for example. But like on the other side of that, of that FDA approval, whether it's 10 years and $1 billion out or whatever, some fraction of those numbers, a company's got to be able to size up that market and say, okay, we're spending all this money to put this thing over the goal line. Are we going to be able to be profitable here? And
Right.
pharmaceutical companies like profits in the tens of billions of dollars, just 1 or 2 billion doesn't cut the mustard for them. So I think that one of the things that I think the point you bring up, Ryan, is really good, which is that increasing access of cannabis based medicines to patients, however it happens, is always a good thing. And I think doctors in general are for moving it to Schedule 3 because now finally the government is admitting that there is accepted medical use. So let's talk about that for a second. So it's not just it has to be demonstrated medical use. I mean, it was demonstrated to the examiners at the U.S. Patent and Trade Organization when they examined the U.S. government's own patent filed in 2002 that CBD and other cannabinoids are neuroprotective, right? They quench reactive oxygenated species, which cause all kinds of damage and traumatic brain injury events and other things. So this is the kind of thing where it's like, okay, accepted medical use. What does that mean? Well, Marinol and Epidiolex are FDA approved drugs. Those have been medically accepted, right? The active ingredients are derived from a plant that is on Schedule 1 where there's no accepted medical use. Get the fuck out of here, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the hypocrisy needs to become unwound that the source of these active ingredients in these FDA approved drugs are coming from this plant that you're claiming has no medical benefit when we all know, everyone knows, that there's plenty of medical benefit to cannabis and we're still trying to figure shit out. The last thing I'll say in regard to this current thing is, what I find most fascinating about everything going on when it comes to the current administration, I think the biggest question I have is where's the grift? If he's going to push this forward, there's a grift. There has to be a grift. There has to be a way of him lining his own fucking pockets because that's what this guy is. He's the chief executive officer of the United States of America, and he only does shit that benefits him and his criminal family. So
Yo, he's gonna come out with his own
question we
brand.
should be asking.
I'm calling it right now.
Is what is the grift if he's pushing this forward? Because there's
Well,
always
it
a
doesn't.
grift.
Yeah, it doesn't have
He's
to be
got
a
his own
direct-
brand,
It
Baron.
doesn't have to be direct payment. It could also be a quid pro quo. And the one thing that we haven't mentioned is the topic of 280E, right? And for people that don't know, 280E is essentially a law that prevents people that are involved in illegal sales of illegal products or illegal drug products from writing off their expenses against their revenues. Right. So, Ken, you can obviously talk about this much more deeply than I can, but I know the company that I was working with down in California, all of our like a whole bunch of our costs couldn't be written off by their accountants against their revenues. So you end up with these massively inflated tax bills, right? And so all of these MSOs, they will, just because it gets moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, will allow 280E to be dismantled, and they'll save hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes every year, right?
5 billion. 5 billion.
Yeah, so they can save the money. They can slip some money into Donald's pocket some other way. That's all I'm saying is it doesn't have to be like a direct, he doesn't have to profit directly. It can be through a quid pro quo. So, Etienne, you should, you've got a really good take on this from our conversation of the day. You should chime in and offer some thoughts.
What are we talking about, ladies and gentlefolk?
Schedule 3 and how it impacts, how it's going to change things.
It's not going to change anything.
Well, it's going
Not-
to change taxes.
Sure is upsetting
Well,
Kevin Sabat.
no. Hold on. For the most part, for nobody. I mean, just being honest, right? For about 10,000 companies and ancillaries, it matters. Well, why does it matter? Well, yours truly has been kicked out of 38 banks, right? You know how frustrating it is when you're doing your payroll and the day before payroll drops, the bank's like, sorry, you got to go. Here's your entire everything, right? And yes, yours truly has been hit with 280E as well. And it was just for 1 year, but they found that I had a loan that went into another year, so then it went into there. And so, something that turned out to be, about a couple of million turned into almost $4 million in taxes just for 1 year. And they can go for every single year. So it affects cannabis businesses. So, in my opinion, somebody threw a whole bunch of money at Trump, who's a cannabis business, because they made a whole bunch of money, and he is the pay to play president. So somebody paid and they're going to be allowed to play. Now, everybody's like, "Oh, well, does this shuts down the 10th Amendment realities everybody has in their states?" No, no, everything continues as
So
normal.
one
Now,
question,
the
Etienne.
pharmaceutical companies have already had access to this cannabis, okay? Just so you know. And what have they created? Exactly what Mark Sheldon said. They created Epidiolex, they created Sativex. Nobody wanted it. Nobody was diverting it. Nobody's in the dead parking lots going, "Yo, dog, you got some Marinol for me?" No one. No one wanted that shit. Even myself, who tried it and had it, didn't like it. It self disintegrates. It literally, because of the oil that it's in, if you save it, it will not last a year in your refrigerator before it self destructs.
Mm.
Okay. And the reason is back then it cost me in the aughts $1,500 just for 60 pills. Do the math, $1,500. And these were the tens, the 10 millimeters, the oranges, the strongest. And what did we all find out? THC isn't it. It's all the other cannabinoids and everything else that we wanted. So it's going to help big businesses. It's going to help the MSOs, because the MSOs are tired of getting hit with these taxes. And I think, Mark Sheldon, you did a wonderful job of explaining what 280 is and what it has been for businesses, but that is only for Schedule 1 and 2 drugs. Once it is now Schedule 3, it's gone. Poof. And then banking opens up. And then real sharks come in. The fuck around sharks have been around. Now the big boys come in, but the big boys have been playing, right? Altri's been there. They've been swinging their elephant dick around for a while, so it's not going to stop. It's only going to continue. So this was a roadblock getting them in their way, and now they're moving in the fast lane where the rest of us are going. Can we just decriminalize this and get it off of scheduling altogether, and free our people who are in jail for this plant, and get our veterans growing this plant for people in need? And all right, sorry, you asked. I just woke up, so I diatribed. I'll get off
Well, we
this.
There's
appreciate it, Etienne.
there's
I
also
definitely appreciate hearing from you.
this
Go ahead,
lady
Brian.
this doctor in Oregon that I follow on Twitter, and she's been talking about how she has a patient who has really severe autism, non-functional, and she's in a state-run facility. And when she's out of the facility, they can give her access to cannabis-based medicines. But when she's in the facility, she can't. The facility won't let her bring in the drugs for this patient.
Because it's a
So,
Schedule 1 drug.
right. So
That that could that's not going to change at all, in the sense that it's not going to allow interstate commerce, because we
no,
had
it's
this
not interstate
discussion.
commerce, but Oregon has
Yes.
a state-run medical program, and the patient can still not access those medicines while she's in the state-run facility. And
This
her
this
argument
could
is that her argument is that with the movement of cannabis to Schedule 3, that she now will be able to give this this inpatient
it will have to
patient.
go through the state medical board, but yes, yes.
So there is some benefit, right? Like I'm not saying this is like the end all be all win, but I think that there is some benefit.
For narrow parts of the population,
Sure.
Yeah,
right?
Hmm.
Let's
yeah,
just leave it at that, right? Because
for
it's going to
patients, but
help.
for stoners,
Okay, but
Right,
for patients,
but for patients, that's a big huge
that's a
deal.
big fucking
no,
deal,
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
yeah,
Holy
it's a big
shit.
deal.
as
Well, that was one of
Sam
the
would
two.
remind us, there's nothing wrong with getting stoned, right? So
That's
I'm
right. But
saying
he would
that,
also remind us he doesn't care who profits.
Right. And well, that's the
yeah,
reason why we
Don't
created.
forget about that one.
That's one of the two pillars of why we created the National Cannabis Industries Association in America, is because we were activists. We came from activists, and this is where I'm looking at you, the THCA and the hemp industry, fucked around and found out in a sort of sense that we pulled our sources together and we created different organizations. We pulled our money into those organizations. Those organizations went and pushed the law. This was our way of doing activism financially behind the scenes so that we could use the profits that we're doing, because back prior to 2018 we had to act as not for profits. We could not register at the United States federal level as not for profits, but within our states we had to act as so. So if we had 20 million come in, we had to spend 20 million by the end of the that December 31st, 11:59. Okay, that was that reality. Now that it is all for profit, that's completely gone. Where we were charitable giving and trying to inspire that, people decided, oh, I need more money. And
Mm.
they didn't put it into activism, they didn't put it into organizations, they didn't put it into lobbying, because one of my buds that I know from Leap is the last lobbyist on Capitol Hill, because everybody else gave the fuck up because none of the organizations have money anymore. None of those THC or A organizations were contributing to anybody. They were all like pocketing and making more shit to get out of their bathtubs. And next thing why did this all happen? Is because of the bad actors. If
Mm.
people were actually doing it properly, testing it, putting real things in, and people were getting actual benefits, it would be the same as what we saw with medical marijuana. They would be allowed to exist. Otherwise, they would have all beat our fucking heads in, which they didn't. Some did, don't get me wrong, but they even saw as what we were doing as noble. Okay,
Right.
to the point where they were like, yeah, we can't fuck with people helping patients who are cancer and AIDS patients. But somewhere along the way, that got lost and that got forgotten. Whereas people like us haven't, we still do it every day, but everybody else is more concerned about dollars than helping each other. And we came from we were called
Mm.
compassion clubs originally. Before we were called dispensaries, we're called compassion clubs because we showed compassion. Okay,
Yeah.
love, care. What you did with Hillary, right? You decided, I can't profit off this. I can't do that. That's just not right. Well, that's the same inner fucking monologue that drove us. We're like, it's not right. We should be doing this. It's too expensive. We should probably give some away to about 250 people a week. Yeah, that's right. You know.
So two questions.
Yes.
You mentioned you have the pay to play president. What is lobbying? Is lobbying not where you pay to play? Because hasn't lobbying existed for like all of the presidents, or is lobbying like
Well,
just new for Donald Trump?
There's
no.
front door
lobbying.
pay to play and back door
Yeah, but
play to
you don't
play.
Yeah,
think that
exactly.
backdoor's been around since the beginning of time? You don't think those other presidents were taking backdoor?
They were more
Not through
watched.
crypto.
Well,
Well, I
they
never
were
said through crypto. I'm just saying, like, are you that naive to think that like George Bush Jr. and like Clinton and Obama
there
and all
was
these other,
oversights in place that Donald Trump first did was dismantle. He
right?
removed all the oversight people, those
I
inspector
suspect the
generals.
other ones were still taking money. I know I would
Oh,
have
well,
been.
somebody was,
Second,
but
second, no,
hold on. Let me
no.
finish on that thought because you
Okay.
make a great point. Because
Yeah.
there was a sting in 1979 where they literally went around to a whole bunch of fucking Congress people and made a whole bunch of bribes, and like half of them took money. Okay, so yes, there definitely is shit that happened behind the scenes, but there wasn't enough. There wasn't MSOs at that size that had the type of money that True Leave has now. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? To really throw around that kind of bribery.
I
Yes, there were
mean,
people running tonnage all throughout the United States,
what
but they
kind
were
of
all
what
risking everything.
what kind of money was thrown around during 9/11? Like how much money do you think got like stolen out of the country when those buildings went down?
Millions,
Trillions, I would say. I would go
probably.
above billions. Now, my second point
Well,
was
through war,
that
trillions,
you
yeah.
mentioned that there was nobody wanted Epidiolex, but they sold 648,000 bottles of it last year, which is like almost a million people. That's a lot.
Yeah, 972
I
million
I don't
million US.
know many dispensaries that sold that many bottles of anything.
Well, well, I guess perspective, like, because when I hear a million, I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a lot, but
Well, it is. When you think it's patients, listen, we all agree if it's two people and they're patients, that's a
yeah,
lot. So a
no, it's a
million
lot. I'm
is
just
like,
saying,
oh
like,
my
in
God.
population, it feels like, Dr. Mark's point, like, if, or whoever said it, ATN maybe said it, like, nobody wants it, but a few. But to your point, to Marcus, your point, like, it's important that we recognize that a million people did get medicine that year, right? And, but there's a bigger,
Yeah, yeah.
just talking
And
out
how many
loud from
people
what,
took a drop of CBD tincture last year?
right? That's kind of what I was thinking is like,
How many
can we,
gummies?
Well, that's what I
yeah,
mean. And it's Schedule 1. So there's my
right.
point. How many
Yeah.
people did take a drop of CBD tincture under Schedule 1 last year, Dr. Mark?
100%.
That's why I'm not
Yeah.
worried about Schedule 3. I also
Yeah.
live in a federally regulated cannabis scenario here in Canada. And trust me, when it was happening, people were complaining. And I'm just thinking, what are you fucking complaining about? More access?
Yeah. Let's just put the
I
patients
don't know if
aside
those
for a
people have
second and just think about
felt the
stoners.
Never
same
Are
put the
struggle.
patients
stoners going to buy
aside.
mids
Yeah.
from MSO
No,
grown mids
no,
at
no,
Walgreens?
no.
That business model is going to fail miserably.
Well, that
It's going
that
to
would
fail
mean a business
miserably.
model that it was the only option. But if you can grow your own plants, if you can buy recreationally, if you can do these other things like we can in Canada, you don't have to do that. You just
Yeah,
have
and
options.
I think Marcus, this is again trying. It's the Fed trying to catch up with the states. You know, they've always said the states are like the laboratory of the democracy. That's where the democracy is really happening, right? So
Hmm.
even like if you think about like even like in Ohio, Ohio put it on the ballot. And a majority voted for it. They wanted legal cannabis. And look where they are. They're stuck right now because again, it's all a fucking Chad Brad fucking game of who's going to make the money.
Right.
Follow the money, man. It's all about the money.
See,
And the other thing I just wanted to say, just to capture this thought, is that it's great to think again, like when we had our episode on compassion. Compassion's a verb, and
Yeah.
there's no question about it. Amongst our viewers and amongst most people who tune in to Hash Church and Hash Church, panelists, we are all compassion, and we're in this for the right reason. We all had that moment in our life where we had an impact on a patient's life that kind of solidified in our own mind that what we're doing is right, and this is exactly what we should be doing. Yes, very appropriate to show a picture of Wade. So I wanted to just say that if this provides better access to really sick people who really need it, but it doesn't change kind of like our game, which is that there's still state regulated dispensaries and all that. That is what exactly what I was saying, Marcus, is that would be an exception because there are no other dispensaries for Schedule 3 substances. They're just not. They're just part and again, like
They're called
I think
pharmacies.
I think Colin said this many times. There is no plant Schedule 3 substance. So the Schedule 3 substance is an active ingredient that's packaged into a pill that people can pop, man. So I mean, I think the whole quality aspect about cannabis and terpene profiles and everything that we're all about. We're all about the heady goodness of the plant. And again, I'd like to see our government kind of catch up to where states are, which is that, look, our states have voted that the citizens in the state want this and they want access to it, and we should be doing everything possible to minimize it. Look what they're doing in Michigan. They just jacked up the tax up to 24%. It's like, no, man, you're getting it all wrong. You want to send people to the dispensaries. You want to get this business going, populate these operators, because when you tax it by 24%, you're just going to go to your plug down the road who grows really heady weed, who doesn't have to worry about Schedule 3, doesn't have to worry about Schedule 1. He's just doing his thing and producing his product. And I think we're all about that. The people in this room, I know we're all about headiness, and we do want to help patients, and we don't want to any kind of government regulation to limit access to patients. And if anything, we want the thing descheduled so we can really do what really needs to be done, which is lowered all access bars that access or that keep people from accessing good,
I
high
agree with
quality
that.
cannabis and
I agree
cannabis
with that.
products.
But three is better than one. It just has to be. One is the
Yeah.
worst. It is
Well, and
absolutely terrible.
here's something to keep in
Yeah,
mind.
but one moving it from 1 to 3 would now put it in writing with the government that there is accepted medical use. We all know that there's accepted medical use, right? But now they would be admitting it. The other thing, and Mojave pointed this out to me last week too, which was that even at a low dose, that zero point 0.4
Speak of the devil.
milligrams. What's that?
I said, speak of the devil. He's in the room.
Oh, there's Mojave. So Mojave would say, right? Mojave, you said it better than I did, right? Which is that it's the government legalizing THC, albeit at a very low dose. They're still legalizing it, right?
Yeah.
What's up, Mo?
How's it going, guys? Yeah, it's the first time we'll have actual legal products that are FDA approved, right? That's a significant step. I totally agree. If it's about taking away the plant from our backyard, that's the big issue. And I am a little concerned about that because here, like in California, for instance, in the past couple of years, the home grow portion of the market has vastly increased. Where it used to be a really small portion of people. And the funny thing is, I'm thinking right now while you guys are talking about this, about compassion, about follow the money, the whole thing, and the arc of home grow to commercial grow to MSO grow to full global, that's been a follow the money trajectory all along, right? Because in the 70s, when the first, really in the 60s, my family started growing weed in the mid 60s. And in our community in Big Sur, we really started growing it in earnest in the 70s and turned it into somewhat of a local commodity. But it was a back to the land group. It was a bunch of hippies living off grid. Yeah, they were trying to make money, but no one wanted to stop being a hippie living off grid. Everyone had already left their middle class lifestyle to do this cannabis thing. And that was the ethos behind cannabis. It was a plant. Everyone should have access. And some people should be able to grow it commercially for money because not everybody can grow tomatoes in their backyard, for instance. But man, when the Reagan era came and the gnarly push on camp and drug enforcement came, it brought in a whole new wave of people interested in cannabis, which was capitalism, pure and simple capitalism. They wore the same clothes often as the hippie back to the landers. They moved into the same county and they bought a pickup truck, but they didn't move there for the same reasons my parents did in 1963, right?
Well, and some of them listen to the Grateful Dead, don't they?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so anyway, so me as a cannabis person who's been in it from the very beginning through this whole arc, by the time it became a dispensary world in the late 90s and early 2000s, you saw some really sleazy characters involved in the business, right? Just straight up, man. I mean, I can tell you stories about LA and dispensaries and doctors and everything where it was so gross, it just made you sick. You knew that it wasn't about medicine. And then so there was this false assumption that we were on this trajectory for compassion and all this stuff, when really it was still the same thing we said we wanted in the 60s, just free the plant, advocacy for the plant and the user. I've been a part of an NIH study on cannabis since 2014, right? And a big component of that study was the Drug Policy Alliance, right? We'd have meetings every month at the Children's Hospital in LA, right? With the dean of USC and all these, we had cops there, we had everybody. It was really far out, right? And it's still ongoing. But I tell you, as soon as we voted on 64, the Drug Policy Alliance, every single person on that fucking team, gone. What'd they do? They took a job for a cannabis company. Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, right? So the advocacy was completely gone, right? The momentum had completely become a commercial opportunity. And nobody along this way, everyone was drunk on dollars. Nobody really realized that there wasn't a lot of money in cannabis because you don't really need to grow that much. It's all artificially inflated prohibition money,
Mhm.
right? All of it. The actual amount to produce is so low. It's nothing. It's really, really cheap product, and you don't need that much acreage of it to supply the whole world. So I think everyone is suddenly coming out of this weird dark age and going like, holy shit, there isn't that much money in cannabis. Yeah, it's a top cash crop, but that's all artificially inflated prohibition costs. So this last scramble here that we're all in right now, this panic, and you can feel it on this call right here. There's an intense panic between Farm Bill and rescheduling and all the failing commodity price in all the state markets. Don't leave that out. Like the idea that the state markets are just going to continue with if federal all, in a perfect world, it just doesn't match. Right. The only way that it matches is the prices compress way, way down to very little and very few people actually grow it. Because that's what would have happened if we skipped all the way from the 60s to now. If the advocacy thing had happened from the beginning all the way to now, instead of this diversion into commerce, then we wouldn't be sitting here going. So anyway, back to what Mark was pointing out is that now everyone's trying to scramble to figure out what the rules are. What's the dosage? And I worked in Minnesota for years, which was really the hotbed of a lot of this weird gas station hemp products and beverage stuff. And the fact that they're agreeing on a zero point 0.4 milligram package that can be sold interstate and FDA approved ingredients, that's huge. That's a huge step in the right direction in terms of interstate commerce for a few brands. And that's the big message. Only a few people get to participate on this. On the supply side, right? On the distribution and retail side, there's a whole bunch of opportunities. So now this is all in their court. So now all they have to do is change that 0.4 milligrams to 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, and they've got a whole industry to work with. And the 0.4 and the milligrams of the stuff that goes in the package, the cost of that, as you guys on this panel already know, is pennies. A 10 milligram beverage, the cannabinoids that went into that thing are like 3 cents.
If that.
If that, right? So this whole thing, it's not the plant side, the production side, the grower side, the cultivation side, it's all in peril and in jeopardy 100%. What we hope in terms of commerce, but what we hope is that we end up at the other end of this with patient access, yes, and the ability to continue to grow our own weed and share it with our friends.
Bingo. Well, we know one thing. All of those things are at risk, but the one thing that is not at risk is cannabis. Cannabis will continue on regardless. And I can tell you, coming from a federally regulated country, we all can grow plants. Everyone in our country that's above 19 or 20 years old can grow cannabis plants without a worry. You can just put them out on your deck, put them up on your roof, put them in your closet, put them wherever you want. Access was not cut off by federally regulated cannabis. And I think you're very right, Mojave. Like, a lot of these companies are still grasping on to these prohibition-based prices based on the prices they've had to pay for grow equipment and everything else, which is massively inflated. We thought when cannabis regulation, federal regulation came into Canada, we would see everything kind of get cheaper and this, that, and the other thing. And it was like, no, that was the one thing they didn't want to let go of was prohibition-based pricing. They wanted to keep that $60 eighth all day long if they could. And it's just an interesting thing. I think cannabis, if it survived the gardens of Kafur, if it survived the Sufis having their teeth ripped out in the squares of Cairo in the 16th century, if it survived the DEA, if it survived all of this insane shit that it's survived, I really think it's going to survive decriminalization, legalization, schedulization, whatever you want to call it. I think cannabis will survive, and I'm not sure about the businesses and the brands and all these other things. I'm a lifer. I'm in this forever. So regardless of what happens, I'll just keep trucking along and making sure that I can educate and teach people on how to make hash. That's always been the blessing for me, watching people's eyebrows go up when they have this realization of what it's like to take the resin off the plant and then, inhale that into their lungs. And I'm kind of here for it, whatever happens. Young people will make this what they want to make it. And the rest of us, I suspect, will not be stopping anytime soon uh, in enjoying cannabis. But well put, Mojave. Really well put.
Listen, I'll go back on True Sinners chat tomorrow. Let's go. Like close it all up. Go back to handles. Like, I don't, like,
Hey,
what's the
I think
difference?
the home grow thing is a really big point, and one of the reasons is let's be honest, home grow is also commerce.
Yeah.
So it
Big
used to
time.
be big time. When I was a kid and you had 6 plants in the backyard, those were like 650 or 100 gram plants,
Dude, you're not
right?
wrong. You're nailing it. Yeah.
Seriously,
No,
right?
it's
And nowadays, dude, I know I have a gardener that I know who doesn't even smoke weed, pulls 10 pounds a plant
Jesus.
off of his 6 plants.
Good on
Right?
them.
Doesn't, but he doesn't smoke weed. He does it 100% for commercial reasons because he's got 60 pounds of weed that he can sell legally or he can grow legally and now have to divert somehow. So I think that there could be a real strong push against home grow. And in certain counties in California, there's no grow or it's indoor only, or there's certain rules
It,
where they're just like,
I could
we're
see it in
trademark.
California, but in Canada, what happened was the opposite. It became so available that people were like, growing this is hard. I don't want to pay for lights and a tent and what, I can't go away now? Like I can't even go away or my plants die. Like I just see it time and time and time again. For a long time, John Burfello was telling everyone, you got to grow your own medicine. You got to grow your own medicine. I'm like, dude, it is not as easy as one might think to grow their own fucking medicine. And when it's suddenly available at 1,000 stores everywhere you're going, guess what's easier?
do you guys think that the systems are um increasingly more complex to test whether or not it's viable as a business and it should go back to what we're talking about where it's just like, yeah, you should just grow it and because it feels like there's a lot of obstacles that like we come from, at least I know I come from a world where it wasn't a business until it was, right? It was just more of like I grew tons of plants. I loved understanding what this plant was about. And then as we evolve, to your point, Mojave, somewhere along the line it becomes commerce, right? And it seems to me that we lived through an era, all of us here, where pounds were $8,500, and that is insane to like if you talk to
Criminal.
degenerate, yeah, straight to jail right now. Like you start saying those prices, it's like straight to jail. Like you're meaning like you can't be talking about prices that high. And now fast forward to today in a structural system in these states and everyone's investing and putting brands and stickers up and all this stuff, but the systems just don't work. At the end of the day, there is no system that works. And what I hear just observing everyone talk is like in everyone's experience, we all are saying the same thing. The systems don't work
We're
at
in a
RK
all.
has his hand raised.
we're in a transition in the
Yeah.
sense that exactly what you're saying. They're trying to set up systems to do what we did, and there is
Right.
no system currently. We just saw, for those who are watching this week, Metric was sued in California and lost
Can we
because they
talk
are
about that for a sec? Because I
absolutely,
want to,
because
yeah,
that's what I was trying to lead into was
yeah.
that the only system now, what is metric? All right, for those who don't know, metric is the track and trace system that the majority of us in the legal world have to deal with. It's a track and trace system from you, the grower, that has to have a tag on it, right? It's a tag that every plant is tagged with so that it is following it from literally its birth to when it goes out of the dispensary door. So these systems are usually set up And there's a very few companies that do these and service them. But it shows, and at least the courts have shown, is that metric in its current sense is still allowing the what we used to do happen, right? They have a back door. They were doing things manually. They were allowing illegal transactions to happen. They were allowing people like Glass House to move their product out the back door because only what it was like 4% of their products was actually making the shelves and the rest of the product was going out the door. Okay, well, enough people were like, hey, 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 hey. And Metric's like, what? Did you say something? Did you hear something? I didn't hear shit, man. And so Metric played the shell game, trying to hide where the transactions were and weren't. And finally, the courts looked under the fucking hood and were like, hey, hey, hey. Now, the guy they went after in a little trouble, regardless. But, he deflected and said, hey, your system isn't correct. So how are you going after me when your system is fucked up? And the court's like, looked back Metric and said, your system's fucked up. You got to show us and you got to fix your shit. So Metric in California, the quote unquote standard that everybody lives on, was just found in court to be faulty this week. So Colin has a very valid point. It's a very valid discussion, especially this week, because many other states that we all live in and talk about all exist on Metric, which means there's backdoors currently in your system to allow product to go, which is all the THCA product that people are buying all out the United States, et cetera, that's been converted to THC or whatever.
I
But
don't think
no one
there's a
inspecting
system
that.
that doesn't have a back door because I know it's happening in Canada for a fact with licensed producers, and
Right.
we have an extremely strict system. Everything's under camera, this, that, and the other thing. Yet, how hard is it to pretend you've destroyed something,
Right.
send it out to the garbage can, and then have your boys show up in a garbage truck and just lift that garbage can on camera, dump it into the fucking thing, and thousands of pounds of cannabis, sorry, we're in Canada, thousands of kilos of cannabis are being redirected. There's no fucking doubt about it.
Yeah,
So
David
So
used to. Since we're
as
also
we
saying
go,
things,
everybody's doing it.
because we're saying things that David used to say. David used to say, "There's not a system that they could create that I couldn't find a way around."
Bingo.
Right?
true.
Man,
We,
see,
we
not
are
lying.
switching in New York State from BioTrack right now to Metric, and when that court order came down, I feel like I should run up to Albany with that in my hand and be like, "Hey
You
guys,
should.
you want to
You
have another
should.
one? Because this is because
Because
listen,
it's gonna
there
happen.
in this this really comes from the heart. This is a scheme that locks us into a Gillette razor buy-in essentially where you buy a tag for 10 cents for every single product you make, whether it's a half gram, a gram, an eighth, a 0.3 gram, it doesn't matter. That's 10 cents. That's absolutely absurd to me when we know these systems do not work. It's absurd.
Well, and isn't there a lot of even in the tightest regulatory metric and seed to sale tracking? How do you divert, like, or how do you deal with, okay, you harvest a room, from that room only a certain percentage of that biomass is marketable flour, right? So let's say out of a room, let's say you get 4 pounds of marketable flour, but you get 50 pounds of trim, right? Like Marcus was saying, yeah, you just take that out the dumpster. No, you don't take it out the dumpster. You send that out to get basically extracted, which turns now a bunch of so-called stuff that's not in the tracking trace system. Now all of a sudden you get 10 kilos of THC, right?
Well, the
So
funny
I
thing
mean,
is,
like,
Or
Mark,
you say you did,
yeah,
right?
you say that. The funny thing
You
is, like,
say you did.
and when we had a small facility in
Not cool.
LA and we were in the process of getting licensed, and we had to get our security cameras put up, and if you grow indoors, there's a camera at every angle and on every plant, every time, everywhere, every person, everything, right? And then, like, I'm paying a guy $10,000 to do just the consultant to do the security camera layout and whatever, all this shit, right? And I drive up north to a field of 13 acres of weed with one camera on it.
Exactly. Well, the other thing about those cameras, Mojave, is once you reach the point of no return is how are you going to aggregate that data? Like in Canada, there's just I don't even know how many cameras in how many facilities. It's like, and it's 24 hours and it's all the
Yeah.
time and it's just recording. It's like, okay, yeah, go look at the cameras. Let me know what you see. How are you going to choose the time to look at the camera? How are
It's
you going to know unless someone told and said, hey, go look at the cameras on this date between this time and you're going to see something interesting. Otherwise, those cameras defeat the purpose after a certain point of time. Once you
there's
have
no
too many,
audio, right, Marcus? Like they're
and
not
there's
recording audio.
even if there was audio, it's like, and even if they're, even the cameras themselves, how good are they?
Well,
They see
if there's
some guy out in the
audio,
parking lot.
but if there's audio and they tune an algorithm to look for certain words, like, you know,
Dude,
they
how
might be
fast
able
do you
to.
think they'll start writing things on
Yeah,
pieces of
Oh,
paper?
yeah.
I
Like,
don't know. All I
point
know is
So
that
Mark, you're not allowed to do that. Like in Massachusetts, you can't have
right,
audio with video.
right,
Like it's
right.
just not like we weren't like when I had our facility up there, it was a real issue at first. Like they were like, yo, you can't all this audio has to go off.
I think that's the reason why, right?
I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I was like, I don't know. At the time it
Well,
was all
you
new to
can't
me.
be
So
recorded
No, it has
unless
to do with privacy and wiretapping,
yeah,
doesn't it? That's
that's
all
right.
wiretapping.
exactly. It was more a state law, I think, but I think
Yeah.
more states are like that.
The funny
So
thing is even in Canada, they got to a certain point in time where they're like, okay, one camera on the doors of the rooms, right? It's like that's about appearances. It's not about actually stopping
It
things.
is, yeah.
It's
Correct.
about the appearance of doing something,
Right.
right? I just wanted to circle back one thing. Epidiolex is actually not scheduled, right? When they rolled it out in 2018, it was on Schedule 5, and then in 2020 they took it off the schedule. So that's that's not what we were saying.
so
Uh,
why was that, Ryan? Can you explain? Can you maybe for the viewers and just myself, like I don't
I'm,
understand.
I,
Can you break
I'm,
down why that happened?
why was it on Schedule 5? Because it's THC.
Why did they do what they did? I guess is a bigger question.
I assume that it was lobby. I mean, Jazz Pharmaceuticals bought GW in 2021, and I'm sure that they put money into the pipeline and said, "Hey, in order for us to really be able to ramp up sales, and CBD has like realistically, it has no abuse potential, right? I mean, it is a therapeutic molecule."
When did Jazz buy them?
May 2021.
Okay,
Like,
so April 6, 2020, Epidiolex was descheduled
right.
before Jazz bought them. So you're right. They might have done that lobbying, got that done, and then bought them.
I'm sure they
Maybe.
bought it. They bought it contingent upon
Well,
being able to
hold
do it
on.
that way.
What about Marinol? Marinol was descheduled. I mean, pardon me, rescheduled, right?
Yeah,
It
it
was
was.
moved from a Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, right? In 99.
No, Schedule 2 to Schedule 3.
2 to Schedule 3. Pardon me, you are correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, in 99. So prior to that, it was, Schedule 2, which was showing that there was medical usage of cannabis, but for some reason the DEA
Not to
didn't.
cannabis, to THC. Not to
THC.
cannabis, but to THC. We got to be careful with those distinctions because they are highly important, right?
Yes, yes. One
It,
compound of the plant was synthesized and put into sesame oil as medicine.
yeah.
That's right.
And again, going back to David, David wanted to make um, a natural version of Marinol. He wanted to make a generic that was made using natural THC. And the way that Marinol is registered is it's what they call dronabinol. Dronabinol is THC, but it's synthetic THC. And so because it was designed as synthetic THC in peanut oil, natural THC in peanut oil wouldn't qualify, and the FDA told them to pound sand. They're like, no, you can't make it because it's actually not a generic, right? Even though it's the same molecule in peanut oil, they really held on to that definition of no, it's synthetic THC in peanut oil. And
For the
therefore,
record, the molecule is the molecule, right?
yeah, but legally it's not, right? Like, which is
Who
the
gives a
bizarre thing.
fuck
But they're,
about legally?
well, I mean, that's
The
the whole
Popo.
That's the whole argument,
Yeah,
right? It's
they
like
do.
these guys create these definitions of terms so that they can manipulate and control,
Yeah.
right? So it's a bit nuts. You're also talking about the one to one, and what's his name? I'm sorry, I'm spacing.
Colton?
Colton. Colton uses a one to one. It's not the same as Sativex. Sativex is an oral spray, and I bet you he's not using oral spray. He's probably taking that as a pill or as
He's
an,
taking it as a tincture.
an
Yeah.
oral tincture. Yeah, so oral tincture actually delivers the molecules right down into the gut, and it's, as we all know, we keep saying over and over again throughout the years here, it's more than just THC and CBD. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually the beta caryophyllene in the extract that might be contributing to the effect.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always not just about these things. And we have things like, there's like off-label prescription. I think like 40% of Epidiolex sales are actually off-label or off-license, which means that, it's that drug is registered for intractable epileptic conditions in children, but a doctor can write the script to an old lady that's using it for something else. Right. That's called an off-label prescription.
Yeah, there's another company in England too, Ryan, Ananda Pharmaceutical, who is taking Epidiolex through clinical trials for endometriosis now. I
Okay.
don't know if you know that, but
No.
I just think it's interesting that, again, like CBDA is much more bioavailable than CBD, but the reason why they're sticking with the Epidiolex thing is because it's, it's easier to get approval of an existing approved drug and its formulation as opposed to having to start all over again.
Right. Well, you're essentially doing an addendum. You're cutting that cost of the billion down to maybe a couple of hundred million, right?
Yeah.
Because there's all these
Well,
savings.
one of the last things that Meshulam was pushing, and I think there's a company that he started over in Israel that's still going along these lines, is when he saw that CBDA was much more bioavailable, and I think it's like orders of magnitude, like several orders of magnitude. Like I want to say it's 1,000 times more bioavailable than CBD itself. The problem that confounds CBDA is it's extremely prone to decarboxylation, and so what Meshulam, the last thing, at least one of the last things he was working on before he passed, was trying to develop chemistry around HU380, I think is what it is, Hebrew University 380, which is basically the methyl ester of CBDA, and then in the body, the methyl ester undergoes hydrolysis to release CBDA. And I think there's still a company over in Israel that's looking at this.
Well, and again, it's important to remember or to state just clearly, CBDA is a different molecule than CBDA. Yeah, they're very
Yeah.
closely related, but they don't necessarily bind to the same receptors.
No, the
Target.
acids have their own pharmacology unto themselves. They hit the TRPV and the PPAR targets, and yeah. I don't know if you saw this other thing too, Ryan. This group over in Hawaii. This was a couple of years ago. I think I talked about this on Hash Church. Found that, in particular, CBGA was effective at completely blocking something called store operated calcium entry, which is that calcium signal that goes into the cell that turns on the release of pro inflammatory cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha and IL-2 and IL-6, all the things that are basically released that cause an inflammatory response. And the acids are so much more potent than the decarboxylated cannabinoids. They really are. And I think that this discovery, I don't know why this discovery didn't get more of the light of day. I believe that this is the first time that you're understanding exactly what the targets are for the acids in terms of their analgesic and pain relieving properties. So it's really kind of super exciting to think about the acids as well.
Did you guys see there was also a paper that came out this week? I think Ethan was on it, where they showed that it was actually a review paper, but they kind of put forward this thesis that there's it related to cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, and that they're
Yeah.
suggesting now that it's absolutely not a neem oil
Yeah.
contamination thing, as a lot of people were talking about, and more likely that it's related to a genetic predisposition of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what Dr. Rizzo
Yeah.
found.
And Ethan writes just one. Again, I used to say this about Meshulam all the time. You want to understand how the man thinks, read his papers. If you read that paper by Ethan, you'll be convinced too. And Dustin Sulak at CanMed this year also presented a couple case studies where it's very apparent there is something that's going on. It's not necessarily THC related. They think there could be something else, but yes, the genetic predisposition cannabis hypermesis syndrome is a real thing.
Does
And
this?
it is a genetic predisposition, and very rare. Okay, just to reiterate, it's a very rare disorder. It has only
Right.
affected less than, a few thousand people. By no means does it affect everyone who uses cannabis. It is not a reason to maintain prohibition, and it is a diagnosable condition for which screening is possible because Dr. Russo created the screening because
Right.
prior it would cost nearly $100,000 just to get at the diagnosis, where he does a metabolomic screening that costs around $1,000,
Right.
which can actually, see if you have that. And those conditions are also having to be heart related. So it's important to know because it will affect you later in life because of the connection to the heart.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the article, but there was an article from a pro alcohol rag that showed somebody puking, saying that, see, cannabis is going to make you puke. You know, what?
Scromiting.
Yeah, scromiting, right? What a thing for the alcohol industry to be, claiming.
Dude,
Well, I mean,
what a
between him
bummer.
and Kevin Sabet was using scromiting years ago and I laughed at it originally too, until we actually looked into it because we never heard of such a thing. And yeah, it does happen, but again, very rare. But most people are doing that from alcohol, and most people have done it from alcohol than they have from cannabis. Again, saying again how very rare this is, and it tends to be also high THC use, which tends to lend to a lockup in the body of enzymes and inability to process, which basically causes a death from other circumstances. But cannabis does have an influence. To say that cannabis has never killed anybody is something that is something we can no longer say. And I loved saying it. I loved believing it. However, causation, until science can prove otherwise,
Hmm.
we have at least 6 deaths in the United States proven that I have links to from actual government studies that prove people have died from this. But again, out of the many decades, and again, the first diagnosed back in what, 2005. Okay, so it's very rare, and we also don't know about internationally. We only really know about those deaths in the United States because it is so close to cyclical vomiting
Right.
syndrome. It's
Right.
misdiagnosed majority of
Misdiagnosed.
the time,
Right.
Dr. Russo says, because it is so similar. That's why
Right.
when people go, they say, "Oh, you're just going through a vomiting thing, pass, etc." But that's not the case. And most importantly, to what you were talking about, Dr. Russo compared toxicity studies of neem to, this cannabis hyperemesis, and to prove that there was no direct path and causality, that they were completely different symptoms and outright causality. So,
Yeah,
Well,
well,
I can say cannabis never
neat.
killed me.
If it was
right.
neem, you'd think that it would be clustered too in certain geographical areas because not all growers are using neem, right? But it does pop up in regulated markets and medical markets all over the world. So,
But it has led to people to go to that assumption, right? Well,
sure.
it's not the cannabis, so it must be something humans are putting on the cannabis. And that was back in the early aughts, that was the initial thought from a lot of people, that it had to be some sort of a pesticide poisoning. Is it the red eagle? Is it this, that, way, or the other? People didn't know because there weren't studies, and there are no studies done on humans inhaling these substances with those substances on them, right?
Yeah, well,
So
we also, you got to admit, I mean, as a community, we're very reticent to accept that cannabis might have some negative impacts, right? I mean, it's not this benign.
that's the biggest problem that Dr. Russo found, is that the only way to stop CHS is to stop. And the majority of people who were using it medically were those people who were getting CHS. And the only way to stop the symptoms is literally to stop using cannabis. And the mentality, he said, of the biggest problem is that those people want to go back to using cannabis and they can't. And that's the biggest rubber hitting the road.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do get into these states where it's like you want to use every day, right? Like you want to consume every day. And I was like that for a long time in my life. Like it was like first get up first thing in the morning, whacking the bong, hitting the bong. And but I'm at the stage now in my life where I don't. Right? I still consume. I don't consume the way that I used to.
Don't judge me, man.
It's
No,
not about
I'm
anybody
kidding.
else. It's
No, I'm
just
just
it's
kidding.
yeah.
No, I think
But
it's important. It's important because I think we do a disservice to cannabis and definitely to nascent users to 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 downplay it as a drug. Oh, it's just a plant and it's just natural medicine. And it's like it is those things too, but it's also it can be a very potent drug experience, almost as potent as all the rest at the right doses. And for some people, even very small doses can be incredibly potent. And I'm sure there's tachycardia related heart attacks that aren't registered as cannabis caused because people either didn't disclose that it was cannabis that caused it, because they didn't want to say that or didn't really understand that it could have been. There's a lot of things. It is a drug. It's a very, 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 very safe
Yeah,
drug.
just eat 1,000 milligrams if you don't think it's
yeah,
that strong. If
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. But the weird thing is, to some people, like a lot of us, we can consume and be very functional. And to me, the core of this commerce discussion is about functionality, and that's what pharma supports functional medicine at a very high cost, but it's about keeping the machine going. And nobody wants your doctor taking bong rips before they perform surgery, but your doctor might be taking a shot of scotch to get rid of the jitters before he performs surgery as well. But the point is that we created a kind of a commerce-based system that was originally off of compassion in medicine, and there wasn't and we kind of we're really in a prohibition commerce world still. That's where all the money is, right? And now people are trying to figure out, well, what's the functionality of this? How does this work in society? Is it supposed to be at the gas station? Is it supposed to be at the liquor store? How much should I be able to take daily? What's a safe dose? All these real important questions, you know, I think they're valid, but they're not necessary in terms of legalization, right? Because alcohol is always going to be the elephant in the room because alcohol just kills you. you know,
Yeah, I mean, do you perhaps, Mojave, think that we're kind of repeating ourselves in history right now? I mean, there was a great presentation at CanMed that kind of highlighted some of this ideology, I think is, very valid for this conversation and something I've been thinking about just off the cuff for a couple of years now. If we look at other industry, like it's sort of where we're landing right now, in the turn of, the same thing that how alcohol came out of this revolution of moonshiners and people that were pushing this ideology. And my family was heavily involved in that. I have tons of stories of my family moonshining and running barrels of stuff all through the Northeast. But it's really an interesting ideology that we find ourselves in, and because we don't, they had a system, right? They have a system that they can work within. And sure, there's people that are going to be making alcohol off the cuff, but they, fast forward to, call it 2018 when the Spirits Act was enacted and everyone was able to build these small brands and bespoke distilleries. Like in Brooklyn, for instance, there was distilleries all over the place that popped up. There was one in Red Hook that I went to that was incredible. So, with that said, do you think we're kind of repeating ourselves, guys? Like or are we making new mistakes that, it's going to be even more difficult to actually build a system around, because taking everything into consideration, this is to your point, you said so many great things there. Like a gas station is very much prohibition era thoughts, right? Meaning like, yeah, anyone should just have access to this thing because it's like it's kind of shady and you know we've got it behind us in a packet. But there's really there's no wrong in any of these things you're saying, because the patient access point is there, you know, but it's colored, right? Like You know, like there's big industry behind one thought, and then there's like a little guy, mom and pop behind the other thought, you know?
Well, well, you said it
Um,
first, Colin. You said, sorry to interrupt, but you said earlier
no,
about
go for it.
the $8,500 pound. It's like
Yeah.
originally commodity was just the plant, the person who grew the plant and the raw material. Like that was the whole
Hmm.
industry. And then you sold that to someone, they took it home and used it, right?
Yep.
And it's like, so if you deflate that value of that $8,500 pound to like $80 or
Yeah.
$8, you know, then the whole industry is not about, it's about everything that happens to it down the downstream. And we
Yeah.
created, thanks to we created all the downstream manufacturing and processing for there to be a real functional cannabis industry. That's why you have
Right.
gas station beverages and vapes. But I think where our hearts have always been connected to the cultivation and the plant side. And that
Yeah.
to me is really what this discussion is about. It's about eventually commerce in cannabis will continue, whether it's Schedule 3 or whatever, however, it will continue because the people are going to want it to be there like they do now. But the money, who gets to make the money are the people who own the people, the person with the can now makes the money, not the person who grows the stuff that goes in the can.
So
And
that's you're drawing a correlation between like where music is right now almost. Like people
100%.
want the
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
but they don't want to acknowledge the guy who made the thing,
Music and
right?
cannabis is a perfect
And
example,
but the
Colin.
guy who has the gate to sell it to you is the queen, king and queen, and they're
But
the
who's
one.
acknowledging
No.
their apple grower? Who's
Right.
acknowledging their raspberry breeder?
But let me just make
True.
this
No,
point.
dude, you're right about Marcus, like nailing it. But
Let me
it's
just
Pickles.
but that
let me
world that
just
you're describing right now, Mojave, is very much that world, right? So
well, my
yeah,
point is, that's an perfect analogy. Is that's why I brought up my family and Big Sur and that there was this
yeah.
moment when it's like, oh my God, there's an actual domestic cannabis commerce thing that can happen. Same thing happened with music when people started pressing it onto a record. Oh my God, you can take something that is just in your backyard, like your guys at dinner, dang, 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 and I can put it on a thing.
Totally. People
And
used to
now,
remember, like people used to go to have to go to church or some big event
yeah,
once a week to hear this thing called music,
right.
you
So,
know?
Or
so,
to see
And
art too.
yeah,
so it's not, and what did music industry quickly become? Not about the music, but about the people who made the records, made the billboards, put it on the radio, and got it
right.
distributed, right? The
Totally.
value of the actual creation of the product. So this is just a capitalist commercial thing. And I think with drugs, I mean, look at psychedelics right now. People are trying to figure out, well, who gets to profit off of psychedelics? Well, mushrooms are a lot easier to grow than weed and people don't use them as much. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this weird thing of like, okay,
Sure.
who really gets to profit off of this thing? And I think when Napster happened, everyone who wanted to be a musician and support their family selling records was kind of bummed. But then was the consumer bummed? No, the consumer was like, fuck, man, now I got like 5 GB of music just
Yeah.
downloaded. I've been listening to the best music I've ever heard in my life, you know?
Metallica got mocked, remember? And they were
Was
all like,
bummed.
"Oh, shut up, Lars. What the fuck, man?" Yeah. And he was literally sounding the alarm, and everybody's like, "Go eat a bag of dicks." And that's really, I mean, but Colin, that's a good point because yes, there's a
He's
way
the
that
breeder
music,
of the
they
industry,
found a
right? Like
way to
someone
back
stole his clone and they're now
right.
growing it. Yeah.
And they
It's
found a
like
way to
seriously, I'm not
backdoor the
kidding.
music right through the system that was created. So therein lies a way, right? Because then what did we all do? Oh, we all had cassette tapes, right? Way back in the
Totally.
day. And oh, we had to put the tape over those two little spots, or it came with it that you popped later. And what do we used to do? Oh, we used to sit around our fucking radios and wait for hopefully the cue to that song. And if it came, yeah, exactly what Mark's showing right there, right? You mark your pen, get everything all
What
set and
shows that,
tight,
Mark?
you know, so you could,
91.
exactly that, bootleg and have something you could not
Fish
access,
from the Colonial Theater, Keene, New Hampshire, 7/12/91. Giant
right?
country horns.
That's a good year.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
there
and
you
the
go.
funny,
So there's a great correlation between the underground cannabis world and trying to come above world, but there was the established music world, which
Yeah.
everybody has always found a way around. that to get what they wanted, right? Nobody
Yep.
had mixtapes or sold mixtapes. It's not about blah 30. No, those things didn't exist. We made our own because we wanted to hear this music in succession, or in Sheldon's case, I wanted this concert. And the Grateful Dead's like, sure, go ahead. We'll sell you the records, but go ahead. You can record our shit. Whereas everybody else is like, no, 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 no. I remember as a kid, there's a show called What's Happening? And these kids snuck into a what was it? Not Three Dog Night. It was something. And they got
Doobie
caught.
Brothers. Doobie
That's it,
Brothers.
the Doobie Brothers. And he got caught with a cassette tape trying to record the concert, and they were trying to give him the moral breakdown of you can't do that because that's illegal, and we can't make money because blah. So, it goes back generations. It's not something that's new. However, I guess we are repeating history just in a different context, Colin, right?
It feels like it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's why I posed the question. I was like, I don't know. It just seems so glaring to me that we're in the middle of it. I don't know. It's really fascinating to me.
But it's amazing that we're
We're
in the middle
lucky,
of it.
it seems,
Right. We are
to be
lucky. We
living in
created
it.
this. We created the
Yeah.
chaos. Well, they created the chaos. We just tried to make order from the chaos, and they don't like
Well,
the
we
order that
participated
we
too. Let's
made.
not forget that.
So
Well, we also
anybody with a guitar and an iPhone can be a recording artist, right? That's what. Anyone with a light and a plant
LED
pot
light in
and
a
some
pot.
soil can grow weed, right?
It's true. And the thing is, through the prohibition, we created culture. And I think like we're also lucky enough to be old enough on this call. Sorry, Caleb, maybe you can Google this, but the whole thing about going to a record store and opening a record and putting it on the turntable and putting the stylus on the record and all of that was so powerful for us. Like it was such
Dude,
an
and then breaking the weed up on the record.
the whole exactly. So we lament the loss of the culture and the personal experience that we had in our cannabis culture in the past. Rolling joints. Like rolling joints is so cool to us. Like, hey, just don't like to roll a joint. I don't know how to roll a joint. I just buy pre-rolls. I just download music. It's just available. It's just kind of taken for granted. But at the same time, I think that's a natural arc of this kind of commerce thing.
Of everything. Look at
Of everything.
snowboarding. It used to be
The Dutch.
snurfing. It used to be a small little plank with a rope and some staples for grip. And it turned into like Burton. It turned into this like monstrous multi-billion dollar, because this is the thing. A few people to get turned on to something, they're like, this is really cool. This is so exciting. They have a passion. They light the fire with all these other people. It's like they just want everyone to know about it. And then by the time everyone knows about it, they're like, I wish nobody knew about this. I wish we never lost what we had. This is so fucked up that it's all changed and it's all this, this, and this. It's like, yeah, it's called like the natural evolution of humans. We always travel in this direction of like the
Innovation.
12 J's of Xmas. There you go. Like, fuck, that didn't exist 30 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool
Just
things
a
that have
couple
come
of
of
years
all
ago. What are you
this. Don't
talking
forget
about, right? But now look, it's the holidays, and look, each one of these farms all contributed a joint, right? And now it comes, it's a nice breakdown. You get a nice breakdown of what each farmer is and what they do and what they did. And then, yeah, you get a joint to smoke for each day. It's kind of nice.
I think it's spectacular, dude, and I don't even smoke
That's
joints.
awesome.
I saw that shit when you and Caleb got together to do your 12 J's of Christmas, and I was just like, man, that is awesome. I need to do the 12 dabs of Christmas.
Yeah, somebody needs to do the hashish advent calendar. I mean, I like it, but they're pre-rolls, and everybody knows how I feel about pre-rolls. Friends don't let friends buy pre-rolls. I appreciate the sentiment and the thought and the concept because I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic. Mom was secretary of the Archbishop, so I never got an advent calendar. Of all things, I've always wanted one. And then as I got older, I was like, man, I want one with weed.
We should
And
do a
finally
hash
had
church one,
one.
Marcus.
No, you
That would
don't
be
get
kind of cool.
a calendar, an advent
We should do
calendar
a
when you're
hash
Roman
church one, dude.
Catholic.
That would be
You
kind of
just get
rad.
your shit battered around by a dirty priest in the back.
Pretty much. You get a stale wafer on Sundays.
Yeah, stay away first.
Merry
Man.
Christmas, motherfucker.
Oh my goodness. Fucking love hanging out with you guys on Sunday, man. What an intense conversation today. I feel like I'm legitimately red in the face, but I think it's just because I've been coughing so much off this.
How you feeling, dude? Are you getting better?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
feel much better.
How's
I'm
that wolf
dabbing.
cough?
I'm enjoying the haze dabs from my good
Oh,
homie
nice.
Neil. Neil was with me in Vegas this year, and everyone just fucking hit me up on the side and was like, "Dude, your homie Neil is like, I really like that guy, man. Like, can I get his number? Can I link up with him?" Such a good time traveling with him. And oh, what do you got there,
It's
Mojave?
the XX. Talk to us about
Oh,
that.
just I was seeing if Caleb would catch on to that.
I know what it is. When he said XX, I was like, I literally just opened that jar in Vegas. I think I preferred, was it double X or triple X that I preferred, Caleb? Do you
The
remember?
triple X.
It was the triple X. Yeah, that
I
one was the more
so.
cat pissy.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. And the triple X had more of that grin spoon, bright, kind of real old school, like remind me.
Acrid.
Yeah, just
Don't get me wrong, I would kick neither of them out of bed for eating crackers.
no, they're all good. And honestly, I'm at that point where I'm like, because I want to give it's Tom Hill Hayes, and I want to give him like a comment, but I'm at that point where like I need another jar to really evaluate these properly. I really feel honestly like I've to give you my honest
I
opinion,
need
but
a solid kilo to get a really understanding.
yeah, 6 months later, I'll tell you if I'm a better person on X. No, I like them all, but I think the triple X was the one. The triple X is the emptiest jar, and that was always Rob's thing. But I'm not sure. I kind of felt like the double X might have had a little more weed in it, but they're all really good, and they are what they're supposed to be. They're energetic. They're
That was the closest flower I've smelt in a long time to actually wanting to smoke a joint. I was very close. I was very, very close. But then he had the Jack Hare live hash rosin 1.3% returner, the very same cut that Craig from Alpenglow and the Alpenglow crew won their award with. So I didn't feel the need to. And then, of course, once I got my own little jar gifted to me, God bless you, Caleb, and the whole crew from Humboldt that were kind enough to offer me that. That is an unbelievable gift that you just never expect. And I will be honest, I gave most of it away. I shared most of it. I took maybe, one dab for every 5 dabs I gave away. Because when you have something like that, how could you hold on to it and not share it?
It's meant to be shared.
It's
Because
meant to be shared.
people haven't experienced it.
So here's something we didn't really discuss today, which is, the if the price drops out and we're no longer concerned with the overprice of cannabis, where it's $60 eighths and all of this, do we ever get to a place where these hazes and haze extracts become viable, economically available? You know what I mean? Because these are the holy grails of holy grails. These are just people think they know until you dab them out with it, and it's just like, holy shit. That's kind of, I've always said, I know we'll get to where we're going when I can go to the store and buy like an ounce of full melt, dry sifted, static haze heads. When I can do that, we have arrived. Your thoughts?
Well, they
It
just
would
came
have to
up with
cost 4x, right?
Well, what if
If
we
it
took a
yields
different
the
approach
quality.
and bred it and we brought the flowering times down and someone focused more of their energy on that? Is that a viable path, Mojave, do you think? Or, because I remember asking this question to you and Rob when you guys were at the lab. I was like, is there a world with this, whatever? He's like, well, you'd have to rewrite history almost. That was kind
yeah,
of
but
his
you're
response.
talking about apples and oranges because it's like it's not
Yeah.
whether it yields as much API or active ingredients or whatever. That's not really the thing because the question is if the price is so low. I
Mhm.
mean, there's plenty of crops that are low cost compared to the neighboring crop over the across the road. but most people just grow more of it. But the real reason we haven't been able to grow more of it is because of prohibition, regulation, all that crap. So it's like if you're like, okay, this one I need to make grow 2 acres of in order to get the same yield. Well, then I just grow 2 acres of it. And if the consumer's there, and the consumer and back to the whole Amsterdam thing, I 100% believe that it's not about the consumer's waiting for haze. They always have been, right? As soon as they experience it, they go, oh, it's back to it being a drug. It's a different drug. So they experience it and they go like, I will pay more for that because actually I think I might have been high twice as long. Like I did the math. And
Or
that's why
enjoyed
Amsterdam,
it.
yeah, and Amsterdam still has a haze market because the consumer found it and they kept going back and saying I want more. When we did in the early days when I did worked with dispensaries, we tried this with late flowering sativas where it was just put it on the shelf, tell people literally at the time we said if you're not happy, bring it back, we'll give you your money back because we charged 40% more. It was like $60 or $105
How about
for
this
an
theory, Mojave? And it only works really for people from North America and Australia and further countries. But when I went to Amsterdam back in the early days, of course, the first time, 95, I just went to the Damrock. I went into a random coffee shop. I, bought some skunk and some other things and, ended up sleeping for the next 11 hours, waking up at 4 in the morning and being fucked for the rest of my trip. But when I went to Amsterdam, when I started learning, arrive at 2, don't go to sleep till 11 at night, smoke sativa all day. And that's where that sativa was really like, man, it was like drinking coffee or something. If you smoked an indica or some heavy hash before 11 o'clock at night came, especially if you just ate a fucking meal, you were done. You just were going to fall asleep. You were going to fuck yourself with jet lag for the next 4 to 5 days. And the cup was only 5 days.
It's 100% that, I mean, it's back to the whole functionality. I mean, if you look at the whole research on like coffee is relatively new to mankind, right? But when commerce found coffee, they were like, holy crap, they created the night shift, for instance, right? It changed the way the world worked because they realized that the world runs on stimulants. And the weird thing is that prohibition imposed a lot of these Afghani sleepy attributes into the cannabis gene pool, right? Where it just wasn't as present as it was prior to the 80s.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah,
economics of prohibition that did that,
the
right?
economics of prohibition. So what I really think is that haze and these not just haze and not just terpenoline, but these profiles that have an uplifting and stimulating effect, they are the profiles that fit into the machine of industrial society. And once people experience that, like we had this lady who did delivery service like 15 years ago. And she had a list of clients that were all the highest level. I mean, they were people that I was sworn by a blood oath I could never tell who are, but they're going in the autobiography, but it was all people who owned like fucking sports teams and bankers and actors and they all wanted just to smoke sativa because they operated on such a high level they couldn't threaten their ability to perform at their job. And I think that's a big issue with the way that non-smokers look at weed. They think that everyone has got couch lock and is all dabbed out and spaced out and can't operate a car, And the reality is there is a little bit more functional weed and there's a little bit less functional weed. And things like haze aren't just functional, but they're elegant and they make you feel fantastic, So it's like when people realize how that kind of stuff fits in the cog of the machine, I do think that will all of a sudden find a huge market. And right now, like it's a shame, but if sativas were more prevalent and more people were consuming lower dose, lower THC sativa in the day, then people would see where it fits in at the gas station more than a beverage or a shitty vape pen, you
Well, I'm
know?
already seeing that, Mojave. Like in New York, I have strawberry sour piff on our menu, and it's living soil flower. I held it up a little second ago, and this people love haze in New York, and you're already seeing that across, like being influenced back west, and also across the world now. Piff is becoming, a real household name again, which is amazing. It's really cool to see because I think everything you're talking about, and I think you're right, Marcus, like it's a it's the balance of having these options to utilize the spectrum of cannabinoids and experiences that you can actually have. And I think it's well said. Like we don't have a large enough spectrum right now because it's very bottlenecked in terms of just pure experience. If you look at the genetics that are being grown largely at scale, they're like maybe one or two S&Ps away from each other genetically and genomically, and as such, they produce very similar effect profiles. So it's really interesting that there's a resurgence of haze again, but I think it's all by design. And it's
Well, I think that to me, as when everyone in Cali started growing these new hybrids in the 80s, I
yeah.
never remember someone saying, I'm growing this kind of weed because this one makes me feel better, or this is a better high. Like that wasn't a consistent, like, oh, dude, these new hybrids that we made, they make you feel so much better, and I'm a better husband, I'm a better dad, I'm a better
Mhm.
worker. It was always the same thing. It's like, bro, this thing chunks, it comes in early, I didn't get it pulled by the cops, I can grow it in my basement, blah blah blah. So this
Yeah.
whole, we imposed all these effects, and not that there's anything wrong with those other effects, but we imposed them into society through prohibition. And then we pushed out the other effect that people had kind of selected for hundreds of years in most populations, at least, which was a little bit more uplifting. And I think the problem why people don't like a lot of sativas today is the first sativas they try are either not really sativas, whatever we want to call it, but they're just too strong for someone who's trying to be functional and go to work in the morning.
It's one of the
Right.
great bummers of prohibition, and I've said it before. It was the how much can I get and how fast can I get it era. And it just sort of hypnotized everyone. And even though if you ask anyone back then, none will say they were growing for profits, but yet they were all trying to find the shortest flowering, chunkiest, fattest, because that just was economically sensible. It's like it cost money to buy the lights. There was risks that you were adhering to that you could end up in jail for God's sakes. It's just
Yeah, well, it's
I
operations costs too, right? Like
and operations.
I don't think you can take haze and put it in the field, even in California, right? Like it matures so late that the later you go in the season, one, you're losing sun intensity, but you're also increasing the chances of shitty weather events, right? And so a lot of it, the economics of it, has been about trying to move that flowering time early so that you can ensure that you're bringing in a crop, right? So I don't know if haze will ever be field grown and you just grow twice as many acres. Acres are cheap. Outdoor field acres are relatively cheap. Greenhouse infrastructure is not. And so you become bound by these economic forces, right?
You got to grow at
Um,
the right place. I mean, but there's somewhere in the world we can grow haze at a low commercial cost, and it
right.
could be
But yeah,
Absolutely.
but that's
it could be inland, it could be in southern, it could be the Imperial Valley in or in Mexico, or it could be in Oklahoma or whatever. I'm just saying it's there's nothing stopping us other than prohibition at this
right. And Colin, what you asked about, can we actually just lower the flowering time in haze and keep what it is haze? The terpinolene the terpinolene terpene profile is dominant. So what happens is, I remember all these Dutch guys used to say, "Oh, we've managed to preserve the best qualities of the haze and make it, breed it into an indica frame." And it
Oh,
was like it was some breeding, some skill of breeding. It's a fucking dominant terpene profile. It's like every F1 that you make with like an Afghanica type is actually going to smell like haze. But the problem is like you're actually moving in more than just that terpene profile into the genome, right? And I don't think that anybody else. It's one of the things that we're doing with Dominic Marcus, who you've now met over in Holland,
yeah.
is we're trying to run these haze plants that he grew at the contract research organization through their laboratory, or through the Dutch government laboratory, to see, is there actually something in the plant that is different than, say, Trainwreck, right, or Jack, or some of these other terpinolene dominant plants that are truly hybrids. There you go. Yeah, these things. And because like now, if you are using molecular markers and you wanted to do something, or I guess you could probably do it with CRISPR too, but even with
That
molecular
plant is so
markers,
rowdy. Look at that thing.
yeah. If you were doing it based on genetic markers and you're actually looking at only the genome, I mean, really what you're trying to do is like preserve the chromosomes of the haze intact and only select on those chromosomes that control the flowering time, right? And so I think nowadays with modern breeding, it's actually more doable than it ever has been before, Colin. But I think that our past attempts, they've always been kind of like fooled by people that are like, oh, well, let's get a bigger, faster plant, right? And then what happens is you start introgressing more traits from the Afghan into the haze background, and you're like, it's good enough, right? I don't want good enough. I want it to be haze only with a quicker flowering time, right? And so the question is that possible? And I think with modern breeding techniques, you can. So
We're gonna have to have Dom come on and share some information with us. Those
absolutely.
plants actually made my mouth water right towards the end. The 165 were the one I started with, and then the last one I showed was day 148 on 11 and a half hours of light. It's just that's over 21 weeks, just for those of you that are bad at math.
Well, I think he grew like 15 of the 16 seeds I gave him. I think it was 8 females, but only 2 of them were really outstanding, which is kind of along the lines of what David used to say with the ratios. Um, but those 8 plants took up half a bay in the greenhouse.
Oh, shit.
Those things are outrageous, dude.
If you, if,
That's
if you want to do a real, and those things were grown from 1212 on seed, right from seed. Like he started those things on 1212.
so those are 21 weeks full term,
From seed,
like
yeah, like I think the first ones
from
came down
start
at
to
like
finish.
150 days, and the later ones that they pushed came down at like 165 days.
Wow.
Um,
You can call it autoflower.
yeah,
Haze is autoflower, man.
you also know me, Mojave. I hate the word sativa when we're talking about plants because it really was a misnomer. When Linnaeus discovered cannabis sativa, he was talking about European hemp, right? And European hemp had been bred for fiber characteristics. It's these incredibly tall, thin plants with thin lamina, with thin finger blade leaves. And when when William O'Shaughnessy went to India and discovered drug cannabis, that's what they called indica, right? Indica means from India. Sativa actually means cultivated or useful in Latin. And so when these plants were originally named by the people that discovered them, sativa was actually being referred to as hemp. And then in the 60s, or 50s, 60s, whenever it was, when the people started becoming interested in cannabis varieties and they went back to the scientific culture, they read, oh, look, sativa is these tall plants with the thin leaves, right? And what they did was actually confuse the equatorial plants with hemp, and sativa is really hemp, right? So I don't use the words indica and sativa because they're really incorrect. Like indica plants aren't short, fat, and stocky. Those are Afghanica plants. Those are plants from Afghanistan, right? So I try to use like equatorials to describe what people in the vernacular call sativa.
I totally agree, and it's hard, but as in working in cannabis, I find that in order to have the conversation be functional without it turning into an educational process with someone who might not even respect you while you're having this conversation,
Of course.
then I end up using the word strain and sativa more and more. And I don't want to offend their daughter either, who is named Sativa, and tell her that she's just
She's
yeah,
hemp. Yeah. Well, you gotta go along to get along, right? But it's like it prevents our
Useful and cultivated. Oof.
yeah. But we do need a word though, because it is, and sativa is a nice word, and I know it, and it's how we're colloquially using it, whatever, but we need a word that relays to the consumer now, not the grower or the guy who owns the dispensary, but the consumer needs a word to know, like, hey, which one can I smoke in the morning without ruining my day? And which one do I smoke at night where I can just say, I don't give a shit. I'm no longer concerned with the world. I'm getting fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, and they've made it, they've oversimplified it. And the screwed up thing is because of the dispensary owners, honestly, no offense, ATN, because you know this better than anybody, is that we've turned that word into a marketing tool, and then most of the sativas that they have on the shelf aren't even equatorial.
Yeah, exactly.
It just became this placebo, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and they all have lost their meaning. It's like, you people are like, "Oh, I've got this sativa. It smells like terpinolene," but really it's a hybrid, right? It's like maybe even like a dominant, like a non-equatorial dominant hybrid, right? But because it's got that dominant sativa or that dominant terpinolene trait, right? People label it as sativa. So I don't try to use these words to be pedantic, but it's really about like the words have lost their meaning, right? And so I try to use words at least with you guys that are informative, right? And I do feel like equatorial, at least in speaking with you guys, I can say equatorials and you guys all know what I mean, right?
100%. But there also needs to be a difference between, so some equatorials are stimulating like a lovely cup of coffee in the morning, and some of them are borderline like taking a hit of L. So it's like there's in that range, there's even a lot of like, yeah, you can do this in the morning if you want to be, go out and paint by the riverside or something like that. But there's another one where you can just do in the morning and, drive your kids to school and be totally fine.
Well, it's the same thing. It comes back to that same thing in pharmacology, right? It's the dose that makes the poison, right? It's the amount that you consume, and like with all species, they vary along a continuum, right? And we can use cannabinoid content as one of those indicators. But yeah, like the plants that I've come across, that when I share them with people, and those people have that classic sativa experience, they're under 12% THC, right? They're not like 25% THC plants. And you see this as well. I mean, Etienne knows this with taking like Marinol, right? If you take one Marinol, you go up. But if you take like two or three, you go up and then you come down pretty quick. Like you get that lethargic thing that Marcus was talking about. And that's what you were having is when you're over in Amsterdam, you're consuming all this THC, you're driving your system, and THC has a biphasic effect. At low doses, it's stimulating, but the more you take, you kind of get this like biphasic dose response curve, where it goes up and then the effect comes down. I used to stay up overnight, Marcus, the day before travel. Like I'd stay up, pack way late, sleep a couple of hours, force myself to stay up, and I'd always take an evening flight. And so you'd leave at like 7 o'clock at night, West Coast time, and I'd just be absolutely dead by the time I get to the plane. I'd eat a couple of edibles, I'd crash hard on the plane, and then I'd wake up on Amsterdam time when you'd land, and you'd kind of have already reset your clock, and you'd be landing at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, EU time.
I can't eat edibles on planes. That gives me an anxiety attack just thinking about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm like, bravo to you and all the people who can do it. But my buddy gave me an edible on the way back from Montreal, told me it was a 60 milligram. I ate half of it. And then he was like, well, no, it wasn't 60. It was like 100. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? I'm on 50 milligrams. I like 20. 20 is great for me. I
Yeah.
take 20. I might take 30 extreme, but 20 is enough for me on a plane ride. 50 was 2.5 times more than enough.
Yeah, well, and when you OD on when you're not
Fuck.
you take too much THC. I remember one of the first times I did that. I baked some hash into these cookies, and I got them. I got through security, and I'm like, I'm through. Let's eat a bunch of cookies, and I started getting really high, and so I went and I tossed the cookies out in the garbage can in the bathroom, and got on the plane, and I was just wicked right at it, like. And so we get in our seats and we sit down, and I guess somebody had checked in for the flight, but their baggage made it on the plane, but they didn't make it to the plane.
Of course.
And
The
so
delay.
So yeah, we were delayed, and it's like, fuck, we're not taking off. And all of a sudden, these two RCMP officers show up on the plane, and they're walking down the aisle, literally looking at every fucking person in the eye to try to identify, who this person was that they were looking for, make sure they weren't on the flight. And obviously, because they got to pull their bags if they're not on the flight, right? It's a bomb risk. So, so these cops come in and like now I'm completely convinced that they found the cookies in the garbage can, right? And like the plane finally took off, and it was like 3 hours into the flight, and until we were out in international waters, I was sure that the plane could have been pulled down out of the sky at any point in time to get me, right? That's the joys of taking too much THC. Yeah, anybody that says it's not a drug, eat like 50 or 100 milligrams, then come talk to me.
On a plane.
Yeah.
It's one thing at your house in the comfort of your own home, but like surrounded by strangers on a plane. And then I'll tell you, listen, even if I had not taken those edibles, I would have not been excited about the RCMP getting on the plane. I definitely probably would have had some personal paranoias going on because
Absolutely.
I probably would have had a lot of hash or some other things on me. Crazy.
Well,
You got about
it's being combined with being just completely exhausted. That's why I would stay up the night before, right? Because it's like I find when I'm like completely exhausted, and you take a big dose of THC, you're out. So it's like I'd get on, and now I've refined the method where like I don't eat the edibles until I'm on the plane, so they don't really kick in until you're asleep. But yeah, if it's too early and the mind gets racing, man, it can be quite a trip.
I also recommend balancing it with some CBD. Okay. I did that originally with Marinol. I took too many Marinol and was on a plane, and yeah, it sucks. It's uncomfortable. Everything about too much THC absolutely rocks your world. It rocked one guy. I mean, I've said this in the past. One guy took a decadose, which back in the day was a small thing about the size of a Tootsie Roll. You're supposed to slice off, a little piece to eat it. Well, he ate the whole Tootsie Roll, and that was 100 milligrams. And Marcus, he stripped off all of his clothes and ran up and down the aisle and had to be detained. So at least you held your shit together, bro.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at living on the brink. It's just something I've been practicing for a very, very long time. Just like standing at the edge of a like the chasm, right? Like just this like open hole, black hole to nothing. I did it enough times. I feel like graduating from the Terence McKenna School of 5 dried grams in a dark room. I can't even count how many times I did that, but I can say that nothing really beats it. Maybe a mop-up LSD dose after processing like 2 or 3 grams of crystal. But no, that's cannabis can get you very close. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable how close it can get you to like a psychedelic, full-blown explosion.
There's a great video online. I sent it to AJ a couple of days ago of Tom Segura, the comedian, talking about giving his mom a couple of
The gummies.
holy, that is a hilarious clip. I highly recommend anybody want to laugh. Look up Tom Segura mom THC gummies, and you will laugh your ass off. It is hilarious. You get right out on the edge, and the less you consume cannabis, like the more of a newer user you are, a naive user, man, it can just hit you in a way that's like as powerful, if not more powerful, than psychedelics or mushrooms, and certainly way more powerful than alcohol.
Yeah, it's a big old slice of humble pie for some people.
You can hear colors, you can see sound.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, you
synthesia.
hear other people's thoughts, right?
Well, that's also why back to the whole hemp Schedule 3 thing is why I was while working in Minnesota. When I first started working in Minnesota, it was the vape only state, vape and gummy only through 2 medical licenses, now owned by Vireo and GTI, and that's it. Two companies in the whole state had medical, and it was vape and gummy only, no flower. And the tribe that I was working for had a deal basically where they could produce flour, right? And it was a big controversial thing because in this weird state, all of a sudden, so the tribe was going to be producing flour. And while this was happening, someone pushed this interpretation of Farm Bill and said, oh, yeah, well, we're a gummy and vape state, and 0.3 grams per by dry weight, we can put in these packages, and Minnesota started allowing 50 milligrams, up to 50 milligrams going by the 0.3 per by dry weight in gummies and selling them to everybody in a state that had been primed for gummy and vape and beverages because they didn't smoke flower. There was no good weed. All the weed was just black market weed, right? So then all of a sudden you think like, really? You're going to just let people buy 50 milligrams, just walk in and just buy it? Like that seemed like a bold move, like almost from a stoner perspective in this conversation, almost unethical.
Might as well grab some 50x salvia while you're there.
You know what I mean? Like just like where it's like, wow, this is like kind of weird. That's like commerce run wild. And then all of a sudden, every other state's like, okay, well, we're going to do that too. And all of a sudden, we're just going to follow this thing and assume that everybody's responsible. And it turned it into this hydroxy 11 world, right? Where everybody was whacked out on the potential, and all these stories started popping up about their moms and their brothers and their kids accidentally taking gummies and this whole thing. So to me, there was kind of an irresponsible thing within the industry. And back to the farmer thing, none of this had to do with the grower. Growers weren't like, oh, I'm going to plant some row crops for those. No, it was about black market stuff getting diverted into Minnesota and other states and being turned into first as distillate, then into THCA, then it's just a legal ingredient. And that legal ingredient now is available to the real commerce guys, the real marketing guys, which were the gummy, vape, beverage world at the gas station and the liquor store. So
Yeah,
like,
but Mojave, do the math on that. I just did. So a 50 milligram gummy, get it down to 0.3%. That's a 16-gram gummy. A
no,
gummy
it's
that
per
weighs
package,
16
Mark.
grams.
No, it's per package. It was
Oh,
per
it's per
package.
package.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So they just first they said, oh, if you're allowed by weight to be 0.3, what should the limit be on a package? So then all of a sudden they're just selling up to 50 milligrams in a package.
Well, I think that's something that they could clean up in the next version of the Farm Bill. That 0.3% was never intended to be used for finished commercial goods, right? It was only meant to be used on flour. But, therein lies the crux of the problem that as soon as you extract 0.3% hemp, you're in non-compliant territory, right? Even if you just top off the colas,
Well,
right?
hemp was never like
0.3%.
the 0.3% was just to identify that the plant was hemp and you could grow it under hemp laws. It was never to extract and try to figure out a loophole to make
Right,
THCA. It was like, here's the
right.
thing that maybe people will have a hard time understanding. Hemp as grain is a much bigger value than hemp as THCA. Grain is the biggest value. There's no bigger value than grain. Everyone eats protein in the entire world, but not everyone uses THCA. It'll always be, I mean, even to this day, what company that sells THC sold for more dollars than Manitoba Harvest, which I believe
No,
sold
you're
for
you- you're
419 million.
entirely correct. And what's happened in the U.S. is they've hijacked hemp to mean type 3 cannabis, right?
Mm.
So that's the issue, is that what they're calling hemp down here in the U.S. isn't hemp at all. It's type 3 cannabis, right?
Like you
Grown
guys
to
could have been a real
maximize
player in
canopy,
the hemp
grown to
grain world.
maximize trichome density, the
100%,
cannabinoids.
Marcus.
To tell you the truth, Marcus, they didn't even contemplate a way to bring CBD to market because it's in violation of the FD&C Act.
Mm.
Like I've said before, if you take an active ingredient of an FDA-approved drug, CBD, which is the active ingredient of Epidiolex, you can't put it in food, feed, or cosmetic, period, for interstate commerce. You can't. Right? So that's, again, going back to what I was saying previous, that's where, again, the HHS secretary, not presidential authority, has basically the power to basically carve that out. And I think that's the low-lying way that they don't need lobbyists, they don't need a new law, they can just carve out stuff because they want.
Bastages. Well, I'm
We
sure
shall
loving the
see.
conversation today. This is like so much going on with the
Of course,
plant that we
after they
love.
figure out how they're going to grift on it.
Always. You always got to figure out the grift. But you know what? I'll be honest, like since the day I got involved in cannabis, I met people who were in on the grift. I
Yeah,
never
that's
like it
true.
was just not the most righteous group of people. I mean, of course, I didn't get to go to California in the 60s and
Well,
70s.
Marcus, this was your first time at MJ BizCon. I'd be love to know what they've called it the Chads and the Brads, right? I mean, or the suits versus the roots, right?
Yeah.
So what was your take on BizCon? Man, I saw a lot of people who've been going for years were saying it was a waste of time. The
I
booth
saw that.
fees are exorbitant.
They
They're not
reminded
getting
me
the
they
level of
reminded
customer
me
interaction
they
that they
remi
believe they can
They
get out of it.
reminded
But
me
yeah, I'd be
deeply of
interested in
those
what you thought.
people who had just done 400 fish shows in a row and came out
Yeah,
of like the
yeah,
best show
right.
ever. And they go, if they play Down with Disease one more time, I'm gonna throw up in my mouth. It's like maybe you're done for fish shows. Like maybe you need to go see another band. That's kind of was my advice to the people who were complaining about MJ BizCon. I've never been to MJ BizCon. I was just so happy that it was happening and that I could use it as an excuse to go to visit all of these amazing people that I've been, never been able to meet up with in person, meeting up with my old partners, having
When
these
was the
people
last
I
time you were in Las Vegas?
never in my life.
Never. Okay, so it was your
Never.
first
I
time in
would
Las
never go
Vegas.
there.
So
Yeah.
there's the first time in Las Vegas rush too, because I'm sure
Sure.
anybody who's never been to Las Vegas, the first time they go, it's like holy
Dude, I
fucking
landed. My
shit balls.
partners pulled out Bubbleman brand, like Pineapple Bliss and all these beautiful flavors. They gave me Puffcos. They gave me Q-tips. I was just like, is this place for real? Like, this place is amazing. But it wasn't the place. It was the experience and the people that I was with that was amazing. Caleb
Right?
and
Did
I
they have
walking around the
scantily
Cosmo.
clad women at your room
I
waiting
did
for you?
not see many scantily clad women. What I'll be honest is I saw a lot of dudes. And I saw like families with their middle-aged wives. Like I didn't see like because someone asked me that the other day, oh, you must have seen so many prostitutes walking around the Cosmo. And I was like, I mean, do you remember seeing them, Caleb? We were walking around the Cosmo. I didn't see not one.
Really? You didn't take the detour to the glamour girls of Glitter Gulch?
I did not take that detour. Jesus Christ.
It is a place of sin, though, right? I mean, it's kind of like perfect for weed, right? Because there's just all kinds of illegal activity and gangsters, and just it's a pretty unswarthy place, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely feel that vibe, and people had their stories, but everyone I was hanging out with seemed to be on their best behavior. We were just enjoying cannabis. We were talking about cannabis. I was quite happy because my room at the Cosmo, I didn't realize what the Cosmo was. I have no fucking idea. I've never been there in my
Yeah.
life. But apparently it was like a central place for all sorts of businesses to have parties out of for MJ BizCon. So we would just bump into people in the elevator and they'd be like, "Hey, are you guys going up to the 53rd floor?" And we'd be like, "No, should we be?" And then we'd go up to the 53rd floor and just kind of do you want to know who I bumped into, Colin?
Do you have a
Dude,
balcony view of the
dude, no,
Bellagio fountains?
yes, I did. Absolutely. All
Joe,
my,
tell me,
okay,
tell
so
me who.
I see this guy on the elevator and he's got Happy Valley on his hoodie. I'm like, Happy Valley. I'm like, I think I might have worked for you guys for a little bit. And he's like, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, you might know my friend Colin." And he kind of makes this face and he's like, "Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah,
does.
we knew Colin, kind of had a falling out with Colin." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, yeah, Colin brought me in for a little bit. I was kind of consulting, helping you guys out with some hash stuff." And
Yeah, only created the whole brand for everybody
he's
over
like, "Oh,
there.
you gotta come up to the room." So I go up to the room, and actually I was pretty stoked because Dredd was up there in the room. There was this other dude that was like super gung-ho, like wild, excited. It was actually a good experience, but Michael Reardon was up there, the owner of Happy Valley, and I remember I thought immediately I was like, "Oh shit, I better say hi for Colin."
Did you? You should. Yeah, always say hi for me. Let
But
him
that was wild.
remind
That was
him why he's
of
in, like why
dude,
he is where he
of
is.
of all the companies for me to bump into in the elevator in Vegas, Happy Valley might have been only the second or third one that I ended up because I was just like, I'm open to whoever I bump into that invites me up to a party in their room. I'm gonna go check it out. They actually had a much nicer room than I did and a much nicer view than I did. So it was kind of the best photos I got was from that balcony. But
That's
yeah, the
funny.
old the Happy Valleyers.
That
That's
just means
funny.
that they spent more at checkout. That's all.
Yes,
Yeah,
You
they're
throw
good at
money
spending
at those
money.
rooms, that's what gets you those rooms.
Yeah,
Money.
he's
That's it.
yeah.
trust
It's
me, I
yeah.
know.
He knows.
You don't get
But
those
Don't
looks
be
without the
impressed by
money.
that. But it's
don't
cool, Marcus,
misconstrue
that
it
you
though,
went
boys.
because I think that, a lot of people have been saying for years, it's just kind of like, you don't really get the value. Like if you were to get a booth, I think the booths were like starting at like 5 grand, right? Or something like that.
It had to be way more. I heard like 30 to 40 grand for
Yeah,
fairly
for the
small
real
ones.
big ones,
No, no, no,
right?
no, 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 no. For small ones, dude. I'm telling you, 5 by 10, $40,000. The big ones were hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of
So
dollars.
talk about a grift, right?
Well, I don't know. Do you think those companies are all so stupid that they go there and spend that money to lose it? Or do you think they might have value out of there? Do you think every one of those companies are like fully just like, I don't know. I couldn't wrap my head around it, Mark. It made me realize
I
that there
haven't
had to
seen
be
anybody comment that it was a well spent,
no, because only the haters have voices.
Well, I can give you an example. And I think it's a split that some companies do. It's just a gamble. For one, it's Vegas. They want to go there. They want to go party. I used to do Vegas conventions for paraphernalia because I used to work with some head shops, and I used to do wholesale glass and with Jerome used to buy Jerome Bakers and stuff like that and sell them in LA. Same time,
Nice.
18 used to work at Galaxy. Anyway, everyone wants to go to Vegas, right? So the cannabis guys jumped on that whole like, oh, Vegas convention, it's an excuse to go party. So companies would bring huge, I mean, they bring 10 people, man, and pay for like a full trip of 10 people and pay for that big giant 50 or 80,000. I don't know what the cost is, but it's insane. And I knew some large groups that every year just compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed to the point where like we're here with two guys this year because there's no real reason to justify paying for 10 plane tickets and 10 hotel rooms and then partying for fucking 3 days, getting back to work 2 days late, blah, 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 all that. So it's half of just them wanting to use this as and I'll be honest, man, Emerald Cup, it was like a vacation. I'd go to the Emerald Cup and it was like you're doing it for business, but it's like going on a vacation. You see all your friends, you get high for fucking 2 days. It's fantastic, right? It's the best fun. You learn things, you get to go, there's seminars, but MJ Biz became like just the big one, right? And from what I've heard from more and more people every year, and I didn't go this year, um, was that it just wasn't worth it for them as a company. And it wasn't worth it because of previous expenses on the previous years when they look at it and they say, like, well, did that help or not? And the other side is it's not worth the gamble for new companies that aren't really pulling in a lot of money to go out there and say, hey, this is the year that I'm going to go to MJ and buy that booth to launch my brand. That's a tough sell, right? Like, are you guys making money?
I just couldn't believe how big it was. And Jair was like, this is tiny compared to what it was. And I was like, that's fine, but it's still fucking huge. I'm doing the math. This is like tens of millions of dollars in booths alone.
Yeah.
Like, wrap your head around it, dude. It was, and I didn't see a booth with one or two people. I saw a booth with like 8 and 10 and 12 people,
Right.
just so many people. It sort of warped my mind a little bit in the sense of the grandiose
Jair
aspect
was
of it.
one of the people who made the comment that yeah, it's done. Like
Well,
like
that's
he's not
because
gonna.
Jair, when he first did it, one of the first years he went, he did like $3 million in sales the first day. He did like $4 million in sales the second day. Like, that is
Yeah,
like
back when
selling
people were buying
$80
lights.
eights. Yeah, but that's like selling $80 eights. It doesn't last forever. You got to just appreciate it while it is. And when it dissipates, it's not necessarily MJ Biz Conference's fault.
Well, there's too many. I mean, there's even in like there used to be the Emerald Cup, there was High Times Cannabis Cup, there was
Champs.
BizCon, there was Champs, there was, CanMed.
Do any of them
A lot.
hold a candle to the size of BizCon though? Because that was fucking
No, BizCon
monstrous, dude.
was still the big one, definitely the industry.
Dude.
Same thing for all the conference, but I'm saying now there's little mini conferences. There's you get conference fatigue where it's not the same thing as like your annual pilgrimage.
Well,
Right.
do you want to do 10 diluted conferences or one annual conference where you hit everyone? Because it happens everywhere, right? It happened in Spain, it happened in Germany. One group does a conference and then they start fighting, and this guy didn't pay that guy, and he starts his own conference, and now they're doing two conferences, and now there's maybe even a third branch off, and that's just in each country that happens, and it kind of gets to the point where it's like the person paying to go to the conference and getting a booth is sort of like, damn, dude, like I wish we could just sort of like get this all in one shot,
Mhm.
get everyone to come rather than like now I'm flying over to the Czech Republic, and now I'm going to Berlin, and now I'm off to Barcelona, and now I got to go to Amsterdam, and it's a lot, man. Holy shit. You're basically,
Yeah,
that's what you do for a living, conferences.
I know these
Yeah.
Capital guys who go every year and they never go to the expo at all. They just
I
stay in
believe
the
it.
hotels and meet with people and
Yes,
have
trust
like
me.
have business meetings. I'm like, aren't you going to go? Will I see you at the show tomorrow? No, I don't go to the show. Really? Really? What the
I believe
fuck?
it because the Umbrella Bar, where I was very close to in the Boulevard Tower at the Cosmopolitan, this giant, fucking horrific, horrendous place, was full of cannabis people the entire time we were there. And we would just go down and harvest people and bring them up and have a session. And we weren't really hanging out at the Umbrella Bar, but the amount of pure cannabis people that were there, you did not have to go to BizCon at all. Not to
No.
mention, you could throw any type of event you wanted to throw. If you wanted to like gain access to an unbelievable amount of people in the cannabis industry, they're there. There are a lot of people that are showing up, whether you want to access Chads, whether you want to access OGs, whatever you want to access, they are there at the MJ Biz conference, or at least they were there when
Yeah,
I
the
when I was
celebs
there.
and their entourages too, right? Did Mike Tyson show up?
I didn't see any like celebs other than Dogface, which is not really a celeb. That guy's just like a cool fucking homie. I didn't see any like, did we see famous people, Caleb? We saw famous cuts of Jack Harrer and famous dabs. Those were the only things we were looking for that were famous.
We
I think the
famous
only
people.
other event I've seen that's as was as big at one point in time was the Palm Springs Hall of Flowers, the first time I went to it. That felt had a same vibe where it was like parties going on and different things every night, and every morning there was something, and there's just meetings nonstop. And so I think, yeah, the Chandelier Bar and Cosmo, that's Mark, that's where you and I met. And then we went up
Yeah, that's right.
to your room.
Yeah.
That's where you guys met.
That's right.
Chandelier. It
That's
was a
too awesome.
romantic
That's
night.
right. And I think yours was the first. Yours was the first text message I sent that to Marcus. Picture of me and Colin. in
Yeah,
front
that
of
was
the ice
awesome.
machine.
Yeah,
I had
that was
no
cool,
idea where it
man.
was.
That was in the Cosmo.
And then
That
I
was,
would
yeah.
meet Caleb in the Cosmo. How fucking
Yeah.
insane is that? Etienne,
Yeah,
tell
I
me
rem-
you met Mojave in the Cosmo.
I have not met Mojave at the Cosmo yet.
Yet.
Got to make that happen, boys.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
next year, man, I'll go
That's
next.
pretty
Now that I
easy to
knew,
do.
it was also last minute, man. We should all, Dr. Mark, we should go meet Marcus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
was really
next time
close.
Bubble Man comes to Farnham, we should get him to come down here to the United States, right? Because you
Yeah.
can, right?
Get him to
Mark?
come to
Drive
Vermont.
down.
Yeah.
I could drive
We'll
right
take
down.
him,
It's true.
take him out in
Yeah,
Burlington.
man.
That'd
Well,
be
next
cool.
month is a big one. Next month is hopefully Denver, New York, Michigan.
Oh, New York.
Yeah, I got to go to New York. I got
New York
some
City?
things to do. Yeah, New York City, but also upstate New York, both.
Well, Colin, we should kidnap him.
He should come to the lab, dude. Marcus should come to the lab in New York. That's what he should do. Like that should
I
just
will.
be
Do a
on
hash
the
church from
on
New York,
the
all three
on
of
the
us.
on the itinerary.
Yeah,
I definitely want to go
let's
see
do
Fish at the Sphere though as well. That's in the
Yeah,
bucket list.
we're going first weekend,
Nice.
so let's make it happen.
I saw the tickets were fairly expensive.
Oh fuck, man. Yeah, yeah. Fishing is a rich man's sport these days. That's for sure.
I would suspect it is indeed. But you know what? That building is insane, and it definitely took money to build that building. And
Yeah.
the whole time I was driving around it in Vegas, I was just like, that is insane. That's insane. And I
Could you
didn't
see
even
the
go
Cosmo
inside.
from your room, or could you see the sphere from your room?
No, no, I could see it when I was on the monorail.
Oh,
I could
okay. You
see it
took the
when I was in.
monorail over.
Yeah, I saw it in the cabs and the Ubers a bunch of times. I think we saw it from your car, Caleb, at one point in time when we were driving over to wherever the heck we were going. Where were we going?
I should remember, but I can't right now.
Oh, we went to the Italian restaurant for
Fresco.
Fresco Italiano for the Arcana Raskaya birthday party dinner. I quite enjoyed that, dude. We had the whole restaurant, those jars of
Yeah.
flour. Can we talk about that for a minute?
That OG is almost as old as I am.
Oh my God, dude. I'm like, how long you been growing this OG for? He's like, oh, since 93. Reverend Fuji. What a fucking OG, man. All those guys are fucking awesome. The flowers they had were some of the tastiest smelling jars I've tasted in an extremely long time. I'm talking like no jar funk like bad jar funk, that weird mono hay jar funk that can happen. This did not exist in their jars. They were fucking perfection. And being at that Italian restaurant after smashing that eggplant parmesan and having all those jars crack open and just get passed around was once again, I thought Vegas is so fucking cool.
You got off-menu food and off-menu jars.
Yeah,
Nice.
dude, it was so good. And top-notch jars, I'm telling you, like I can't say enough. And then of course, Fuji's just so fucking generous. He's just pulling handfuls out and giving them to all my, because I brought like, I brought like 5 or 6 people with me to that birthday party, and I had one seat available. So they were pretty cool to make a whole other table. Shout out to Andrew and Michael from Arcana and that whole crew, because they're just really good guys, really easy people to sit at a table with. The polar opposite of what I would call it, Chad, to be honest. And obviously, Andrew and Michael with this super intense, intimate connection to the Grateful Dead. You could feel that as well. They're just good dudes. Hope to get them on Hash Church again one day soon.
So in general, it was a good trip.
I had a good time, but I was starved, right? It would be like me going to a fish show today, dude, and everyone being like, that was the worst fish show in 20 years. I'd be like, it was the best one I've seen in the last 20 years. It's all about perspective, right? And when you spoil yourself, your perspective can get rotted from the inside out. And so if you find yourself spoiling yourself with any particular thing, it could even be cannabis, take a break. You come back to a fulfillment, a good fulfillment that you get out of it versus, this sort of negativity that, well, I saw towards the end of my fish touring. I saw just people coming out going, ah, yeah, if they play that again, I was just like, damn, dude, like you need to go see another band because this
Take
band is
better
upsetting you.
drugs.
Yeah, or take better drugs. Yeah, exactly. Or take better drugs and go see another band,
Yeah.
you know? Or like Trey said in 97 or 98, go get a fucking life. Go do something else. Go travel for God's sakes. I think it was 97 because in 98, that's when me and Henry both randomly went to India and bumped into each other. Henry from the Water Wheel.
Henry Schwab.
Yeah, I bumped into him in the middle of fucking nowhere in northern India. Right after that, I think it was in Vegas actually that Trey told everyone to go kind of, do something else. Like we appreciate you, but holy fuck, like it's a big world out there. And it
Read a
is.
fucking book.
Yeah, yeah, read a fucking book, man. All right, it's time for everyone to tell us what you're puffing on. I'm gonna puff on some more of this Haze live hash rosin from Neil over in Montreal. Thank you, sir. Ooh, Mark's got the baller jar. Oh, did I tell you I bumped into Dreddy Bill?
Kind Bill. Yeah, yeah.
Kind
You
Bill,
sent me a
yeah.
pit.
Dude,
You
I
sent me
bumped
a picture of you and Kind Bill.
Dude,
Yeah.
that was in the middle. That was also in the pit of the fucking demon that is Vegas. Like I don't even know where the closest door was, but we bumped into him as well, which was it was pretty cool. Small world.
Yes, that's the live resin meets bubble hash. It's
Yeah.
like, right?
Yep. We chilled out for a little bit.
Had you guys met before face to face?
I do not believe we had, but we definitely shook hands and showed each other the proper respect that was due.
Sent me a selfie?
Sent you, I was like, I'm sending this to Dr. Mark right now. He's like, yeah, send that to Dr. Mark, man. I was like, fucking right.
Oh, Kind Bill's my boy, man. We're all deadheads, go back for a long time. So, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. Hey, for that reason alone, Vegas was cool, right? You got to go and, hang out with a bunch of people, Kind Bill, Dread, that's what it's all about. It's all about the connections that you make personally. And,
Dude,
if you're going there looking for a job or looking for a client, good luck, But if you're going there just to kind of like hang out with your bros and maybe blow off a little steam before the holidays.
I'm not gonna lie, I found both of those too. It was all available to me. It really was. I would go back during that event just to link up with people. And the one person I really regret not bumping into was Craig from Alpenglow, and his fam. I would have liked to have seen them. They were so close. But one thing I learned about Vegas is that close is not even fucking close. It's actually quite fucking far away. That's what close is. It's like, look, it's just right there. It's just right across the street. Let's walk over there. 49
Yeah,
minutes
no.
later, man, you're not fucking there. 49 minutes later, I'm a fast walker, bro. I don't walk slow. I walk fast. It's like, how many kilometers is this? Why did it look like it was just right there? It's like, it's the
Across from your
scale.
balcony, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the scale of because we were at I was visiting Chris from G Pen, who owns Student Glass as well, and he was at the Win, and the Win was basically like, or the Encore, one of the two, the closer one to this convention center. And I looked out his window. I was like, dude, the convention center's right there, and he's like, no, it's not. You got to get in an Uber, dude. Don't even think of walking down there. He's like, first of all, look at the roads. Show me where you're gonna cross. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm looking
exactly.
at the road. I'm like, oh fuck, there is nowhere to cross. It's like, what the fuck? It just blew my mind.
Well, and you got to walk through some big ass fucking casino before you get out to the street, right?
Dude, those casinos could give you an anxiety attack if you
Oh my God, you could get lost in there and never come out,
you can. Thank God for my Puffco.
All the bings and the bongs.
Puffin tough.
Cannabis Business Times used to do an event in Vegas that was really good. And it was like it was because Cannabis Business Times is not their business, it's a business event, but it was always about the business of growing weed more than it wasn't an investor summit. But that event was really good. And you always met someone new. You saw your bros, and there was great speakers and good booths and stuff like that. But it was much smaller than MJ, obviously, but it was super focused on kind of plant geek business side. Really valuable, man. And they stopped doing that a couple years ago just because of the challenges of the industry. But that was awesome, man. I used to go there and have the best time.
Nice. I didn't even know about that one.
Yeah, year after year. They did it for Kenny Morrow got me and Rob, and we did me and Rob and Jim Goodwin did a panel with them in like 2017 in Oakland.
Yep.
And they eventually got to Vegas, and it was a big part of their business was that conference. I mean, they're a print magazine, but the conference was big. ATN, you spoke at a few of those, I believe, right?
Yeah, I gave a keynote in 2017.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
You
that
know,
was good.
Kay from Trichome Technologies did not talk to me for almost 10 years for promoting and selling those terpenes that Tony made back in the day. He's now gotten back in touch with me, and the only thing he'll talk about is how those fake terpenes destroyed everything, how nobody liked them, how everyone hated them. Can we all agree here once and for all that those fucking terpenes were incredibly tasty and flavorful? And I don't remember anyone not fucking liking them when they were here, including Skunkman Sam, who crushed between 50 and 100 vials. I mean, say what you want. Recently Tony went online on one of the podcasts and he said some things that maybe weren't his story, his history, and he got called out harsh for it. But then people started calling him out for the fake hydrosol terpenes, and I just have to like back him up saying, dude, those fake hydrosol terpenes were the greatest fucking thing since sliced bread. And every one of you can admit it because we were dipping and dabbing and fucking taking huge, and the taste of the Jack Frost on your lips and all the way down your throat. I'm telling you, dude, like I can give Tony his flowers where his flowers are due. Those terpenes were fucking incredible. Whether, Kay wants to disagree with that or not, that's great. Put something better on the market and show us what you're talking about. But the story of him talking about making rosin with the bowl, that's Chadwick's story. That was just not true at all. And I think if it was true, there'd be a historical context of it here on Hash Church of Tony talking about that when Soil Grown came in on episode 25 and showed all of us how to press flour and hash rosin using a hair straightener. I still didn't hear one of you admit those terpenes were good. That's interesting.
No, I'll speak. I was letting you finish. I just wanted to say
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I was also there. I lived it. I was in Oakland. I've seen the lab. I taste the terps, and we were there. I mean, those were not hydrosols. I mean, I know what hydrosols are. Those were cleaned up, post-processed, refined terpenes, and that's what it
I,
was.
I, I can't speak of any of the science. I saw the COAs. I never did the COAs myself. I just know that the how good the dabs tasted. Some of the best dabs I ever gave away to people were just like flavorful rosin hits or full melt bubble, just ever so lightly dipped into one of those vials. I mean, that was enjoyable. I just don't understand how you could be so upset with the way a history played out, especially someone like Kay, because he's smart as fuck, to just disregard the reality that people loved them.
I never
Yeah.
tried them, Marcus. That's the only reason I didn't.
You never tried them?
No.
Oh my
Red
God.
Congolese was amazing. The Congolese was delicious. I remember that.
Dude, that Jack Frost was next fucking
The
level.
Jack Frost was incredible. I mean, it made me buy packs of seeds of it, to be honest.
You know,
I taste the terps and I was
I
like, oh
just
my gosh, I gotta find this varietal somewhere.
interesting fun fact. I learned that a family friend whose husband was actually a dope grower and a cannabis grower in Big Sur back in the day. Um, she coined the term hydrosol. She was an aromatherapy chemist lady who I can't remember her first name. I'll look for it. But it was interesting. It's a new thing. She came up with it, and she wrote a few
What?
books on.
Wait, hydrosol?
Yeah, that's
No, hydrosol is a term of chemistry art that's been used for centuries to describe the
really.
the water of a steam distillation fraction. So when you steam distill anything, you get this huge water fraction. That's the hydrosol, right? That's how they make rose water and other things. It's just all the water soluble terps that come over in
What
a
did you
steam
say her name
distillation.
was?
I'll look it up. Her last name was Rose.
You're right. The term hydrosol in the context of aromatherapy and essential oils was coined by Jean
Deanne
Rose
Rose.
in
Yes.
the early
Yeah.
1990s.
Yeah.
Sources vary slightly between 89.90 and 90, but that is in the context.
Of
Prior to
aroma.
this, those waters were commonly called hydrolats, especially in Europe and France, aromatic waters or floral waters. The adoption of hydrosol helped evaluate their recognition as therapeutic products in North America. That's interesting. I always like to go to Grok and see what it has to say. And then, of course, it gives her aromatherapy contributions.
Groovy. She was also a fashion designer who made clothes for the dead. And
I'm going to
that
ask Dr. Mark about the context of hydrosol in chemistry. But that's
Yeah,
crazy
so
that her name came up, dude.
yeah, so the hydrosol is the water fraction of a steam distillate.
Yes.
And steam distillation's been known for
Yeah,
centuries.
well, the first time hydrosol was used and recorded was around 1860 to 1865, which
That sounds
emerged
about
during
right.
the early development of colloid chemistry.
Colloidal chemistry, okay.
No, colloid, which
Colloid.
was coined by Thomas Graham colloid in 1861.
So I think there's some people in the chat are like, why would you add terps to stuff? Well, at the time, I don't think any of us really understood enough about it, and we were all extremely excited about the possibilities.
Man, we were
And
just having fun. Listen, this is how it started. The
you
funny
know,
thing is, this is so
yeah.
fucking crazy. Kay fucking started it all. He called me one day. He's like, I'm with Sasha Shogun and we're doing terpene extractions. And let me tell you something. You need to get the terpene fraction out of the water and
Yeah.
back into the hash. That's what he told me. He called me and said that. Well, I was so fucking busy at the time. I was like, I don't have any time for this. And I've told this before. I told two people. I told Tony and I told Horatio. And both of them ended up with steam distilled or hydrovac, whatever, terpenes. They ended up with these, flavorful. There's no doubt they were flavorful. Tony's were water clear. Horatio's at first were yellow. He was
Yeah.
somehow, Tony's trick was that, and this is my guess, that he was using an incredible chiller that chilled the precipitate down to a minus 80 Celsius. And so when his vapor turned back into a liquid, it was clear, which back then nobody had. He was the only one that had it. And I kept telling Kay, well, then do it better. Like show us what we need to do. Like this is what it's all about. Make it available to people. And Tony did do that. He made it available to people. So did
Yeah, so
I.
the
I
point
helped.
with Kenny is Kenny knew he was on to something big, and he filed a patent on it, right? And then wanted to somehow commercially exploit that patent. So I think he felt as though, Tony and others kind of did the end around on him.
Well, when you buy a patent, what you do is, and keep in mind, it was his words that got Tony making terps in the first place. I hope you're
I
listening,
know.
Kay. It was your
Yes.
fucking words, bro. You shouldn't have called me. What did you think I was gonna do? Keep it a secret? I can't keep anything a secret. Fuck, the only thing I ever kept a secret was Skunkman Sam's because he showed me and then specifically said, don't tell anyone. You know what part you didn't say at the end of that conversation, Kay? Don't tell anyone. That's the part you forgot. And that's why I got on the phone and said, Tony, do you know how you should check out I think Tony was at some lab in Florida at the time when he got that question asked, and he was probably standing next to a host of chemists. And yeah, you can do this. Hydrovac diffusion, super easy. Invert the unit so that the heat isn't super close to the material. You can still distill terpenes. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing today. Obviously, somehow it died off, but I'm telling you, while it was going, I absolutely know for a fact I loved it beyond trying to make money off of it. It wasn't just about trying to make money. It was really about trying to let other people have access to something instead of sitting like a wanker on Hash Church and just smoking these terps and being like, oh, if only you peasants could experience this. It's too bad that none of you will ever get to because we're the only ones that know how to do it. Fuck that. That was never my trip. It was always about letting people decide for themselves. And in my last conversation with Kay, he was very much still like those terps were hydrosols, they were garbage. You guys were con men, you were ripping people off. And I'm like, man, your ability to have lost money on your patent or to be the guy that sold it, he was kind of like fell into the Mila category. She had the bags first, but did she sell the most? Nope. I get it. Butt hurt is butt hurt. And I'm sorry that you're butt hurt because I really liked Kay and it sucked not having him as a friend, especially when it was like, I can't be your friend because you're friends with Tony. That's the worst kind of fucking grade 8 fucking mentality that I could ever come across. But some of the smartest people I know, in fact, the smartest people I know also, have these strange situations where they do things like that. And hopefully one day it'll all be good and I'll be able to sit with Kay and enjoy, some of his terps that, here we are 11 years later and still haven't tried. That's a while.
So this is the reason why Horatio called me on the Hash Church to begin with, right? It's like
Yes,
this guy
exactly.
Tony is making believe like he understands chemistry, Mark, and you set him straight. And
Well,
I
I'll tell you, either way, his lack or thereof of chemistry, someone around him knew what they were doing because those terpenes were delicious.
well, and here I am 10 years later and still on Hash Church. Right?
I did try case terpenes.
Delicious?
They were
Yeah.
delicious. Yeah.
All
It was just,
right. That's what we
yeah.
like to hear.
Yeah. But that was, yeah. And it was
Yeah, he
actually
used
the
to
first
walk
time.
around with a little vial, right, Mo? He'd
Well, yeah,
walk.
Rob, it was more like Rob pulling out like the top secret,
Yeah.
giving you that look, that Rob David look of the NDA with their eyes. You know what I mean?
It would have been
I'm
good to
not too
hear
sure.
Skunkman Sam's palate decipher the difference between the Blue River terps and K's terps because I'm telling you, Skunkman Sam had a pile of those Blue River terps, and in my opinion, he didn't smoke garbage. That's where K's sort of thing just breaks off. It's like, dude, Skunkman Sam, bro.
No, they were legit terps. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. I mean, they were legitimately amazing. I mean, I
Yeah,
have,
but I think
you know,
it's difficult to patent a process like that someone else isn't going to somehow rip off.
Then
And
put it
I
out
remember
there
when
and
when
make it
when Kenny
available.
when Kenny got pissed at me, Marcus, it's when I went and visited Indra because Indra somehow got involved with some terpene extraction company. I forget exactly what the gymnastics were there. But yeah, he was convinced that Indra was ripping him off too somehow.
just gotta commercialize it,
I
man.
get it.
Like Marcus
Yeah,
said,
you
put
just
it
got to
out.
commercialize it. I mean, I think we could have helped Kay personally. Like, like
100%.
I would have promoted Kay's terpenes all day long. It wasn't about whose terpenes they were. Tony had the only ones, and the next 10 to come out of the queue were truly garbage,
Yeah.
like garbage. Like it was unbelievable how bad they were.
Which
Yeah.
tells you that they don't really know what they're doing.
Well, you know what? But I had a guy tell me it's as simple as putting it through the minus 80 or the minus 40 chiller. Like this is the big difference.
Yeah.
If you precipitate it back into a liquid without that temperature, they go
Yeah.
yellow and they
Condense is the
go
right word, not
and
precipitate.
and they ester condense, sorry, yeah, and they esterify. There's esterification of terpenes that occur in the heat where they change into completely
Yeah.
different molecules.
They do.
Hmm.
They do. They
I
That's
do.
why
think
it's
that
hard to
was
get gas from steam. That's why, there's other tech that's out there now.
Well, the molecules themselves are super fragile, and like you say, just heating them up a little bit, especially in an atmosphere of air, which has got
Hmm.
oxygen, they start yellowing and decomposing, and yeah, you have to
that's why
treat
we
them with
love our
paper
yellow
rolls.
rosin.
Yeah,
Well, I
Remember
mean,
when they
that's
told us rosin was heating up too much and that it wasn't going to catch on, it wasn't going to be good?
well,
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
Kay was
color
at
is, as you said, is oxidation in different forms,
yeah,
right? And it depends
yep,
on what chemical constituents, right, Mark?
yep,
Like what's there dictates like how clear something is. Like I've pressed things out that came out like super clear, but the terp profiles were, very particular.
welcome,
Um,
Fletch.
Kay Fletch. Well, Kay was ahead of his time, right? Kenny was basically
Definitely.
a visionary, and the thing about visionaries are they see things that others don't, and they point them out, and then sometimes others just run with the ball,
yeah,
and I think this is the case there, where Tony had the wherewithal to do so, and Kay had the concept and the idea. But that concept and idea, there was different ways to arrive at
yeah,
scientifically, and I think that's the eureka moment was there. However, there was different ways to arrive
hey,
at eureka, and I think there was an underlying frustration because he thought he had the one route there when in fact he didn't. And it ego, etc. I love Kenny. He's a good guy. He means well, and he's done nothing but show love.
yeah,
But I have to agree, you have to still get it to market. It still has to be there. And down in my refrigerator, I have one of his original encapsulations and separations. I've kept it historically because, that's a piece of history, right? And these are important things to keep, but I just don't have a museum to donate it to that would actually respect it and treat it in a way that it needs to be respected and kept. So this also inlays to something which is our history that we have, which there's a lot of it, but there's no way to display it except in few places that, like in Amsterdam and in Barcelona. But we definitely need something in North America that is proper, standalone, so that, when people like us die, we can donate our cannabis historical facts to. because these are important discoveries. Kay's vision helped spawn a whole series of ideas and concepts that we would still be struggling with if that drop had not been put into the ether, which, Marcus, you did. You helped spread the word, and you just happened to be right next to a catalyst who's like, hey, I can do this. And goes to, the ideology of creation, as well as, that brings on that whole frustration over, what's patentable in cannabis, what isn't, what can I profit off of from cannabis. So it opens up a ethical can of worms that we've never really confronted as much as we've sidelined and gawked at, because we have no like authority or a council of cannabis experts who deem this is good, this is bad. We've inadvertently become that through our experience, but there's oversight orgs for every type of, you name it, product, etc. That's all staffed with experts, right? I mean, and all your chemistry stuff, Doc, Sheldon, right? All your stuff is all comes from doctors who do white papers and all kinds of formalities and understanding that put out those white papers so that we can understand what these are. And what we lack in cannabis is scientists doing those types of white papers on, such as that, original, refraction separation, however, those initial separation of those terpenes, etc., are that we've come to understand and now has become industry, but we have not followed like regular industry and announced what's happening to the public. People have kept it proprietarily, whereas a lot of other industries, at least agriculturally, tend to share data and information and announce things as they've gone. This is, I think, one of those short findings that we find ourselves at, and why there's such a lack of history or understanding of a lot of that is because there's not a lot of it out there to understand, or announcements or reference points for people who are coming out of school to understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sheldon and Colin, if I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I
Nope,
think
you're right.
to finish it off with Kay, I would say that he's always invited on Hash Church to share his voice. I've invited him countless times to give his perspective. And like I said, the terpenes that did become available, because it's kind of about access, right? Like I don't give a fuck about your patent. I don't give a fuck about who. I'm of the Skunkman Sam school. It's about access, not who gets to profit. If you get to profit, awesome. I totally am stoked for you. But if you don't, I'm not like overly bummed for you. It's about making it accessible, and UK did make it accessible by simply saying those words to me into the phone receiver, and that was it. That's all that I needed in my head to kind of push that out into the world. And I pushed it out to Horatio and Tony, and they went off and did something with it. And yeah, I mean, here in Vancouver, all of a sudden, Horatio had terpenes that were available. People were starting to get to enjoy a different type of bioassay. I mean, my God, we brought those things to Jamaica and absolutely blew the minds of every Jamaican hardcore smoker that we met. It was just really a fun time in cannabis. And to look back and think that he thinks that was all fraud and con and hype, it that kind of bums me out.
Yeah, no,
Well,
you know, I think, when I was a lot younger, I looked at Trichome Technologies as like the future. Like these guys are on this like next level tip. Like there was everything as a young grower I wanted to aspire to kind of be. Like they were hanging out with the right crews, they were in the right talks, they just were doing it, you know what I mean, in the ways that I wanted to be doing it. And so I think, there's, they have a legacy, I don't know, in my eyes, is what I'm getting at, and there's nothing, no one can take that away from them, you know? Um, so but yeah, I think you're right, Marcus. Like, it wasn't fraud. Like, I was there. I believe every word you're saying, and I hope that Kay does come on. That would be cool to hear him have a good, healthy conversation with you about past, present, future, and perhaps learn about maybe new things that he's doing, you know?
He's always welcome. I don't think he's going to be talking about anything new with us that he's doing anytime soon, but he's definitely always welcome, dude. Like I said, I met Kay a very long, well, not met, but Kay and mine and Kay's path crossed a very long time ago through our friend Nick, who owned a magazine called Red Eye. And Red Eye magazine was a magazine that both Kay and I, from very early days, I met Nick in Rob Clark's apartment in Amsterdam, which I believe he finally doesn't have anymore, which is fucking crazy. So I could probably even say where it was, but I won't. It was in Amsterdam. Always the most utmost respect for Father Rob. But I was there, and I can't remember who else was there. It was me and Rob and one other guy, and then Nick came in, and he was like, "Oh, I just got my hash box for the cannabis cup. I'm a judge and blah 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 blah." And he thought I was like Rob's nephew or something. I was just like, I don't know what I was like back then. Maybe a kind of trying to be a know-it-all hash guy, but I was just talking about hash. And there's Red Eye magazine right there that Colin is holding up. I might have an article in there. If not, Kay probably definitely does. And if
You
not,
definitely do, and
definitely
I
Nick
think
does.
there's a
So,
really cool jelly hash
oh yeah, yeah,
article in
that's
this one.
ResDog and Soma. That was when ResDog
Yeah,
showed
we
Soma how to
also
make BHO. Yeah,
Here you
yeah,
classic,
go.
they
classic.
interviewed they came to
Jelly.
BCG and interviewed us because my lawyer was all worried because I let them take a shot of inside you know
Dude,
the
N-
cabinet, and there's just all this weed, which is something we
Nick
never
was a
would have.
madman, first of all. He would go to Morocco under the disguise as a coffee shop sniffer, and he would go and take pictures of tons of hash and meet like hash fucking like massive gangsters back in the day that like ran the scene, like seriously scary fucking people, and then totally exposed them and wrote like a 12-page article on them. But when I met him at Rob's, he pulled out his High Times Cannabis Cup hashes. And it's funny enough, I think you guys won that year, Mojave, the Sage 2.0 from the Katsu. Yeah, because I saw it in the little thing, and I pulled it out and I opened it and I said, "Here's your winner right here." And I don't know, I was just being cocky, but then it ended up winning. And Nick was like, hit me up afterwards. He's like, "Would you like to write for my magazine?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'll write for your magazine, homie. No problem. Let's do it." And that's how I ended up writing for there, and that's how I met Kay from Trichome Technologies. I don't think I have my Trichome Technologies things anymore, but God,
Whatever happened to Red Eye magazine? I mean, that was really a
wow,
quality.
Nick got sick. Nick got very, very sick. He eventually passed away.
Check out the burglar
Um,
mask he's got
yeah,
on.
that's
He's got the
Nick. That's
Hamburglar,
Zorro. He always
the,
wrote under the handle Zorro,
the Zorro mask.
putting himself at absolute and total fucking risk to write cannabis articles. He had the least amount of advertisements. So the magazine was all these like 12 and 13 and 15-page articles that were just like glossy photographs, and like Nick would say everything that he didn't give a fuck. He had zero fucks to give that guy. And God bless him, because he was really a pretty good fucking human being. I miss him for sure. As much as he chain smoked cigarettes and smashed beer every second that I was with him, he was awesome. Yeah, there's a Trichome Technologies right there. Back in the
Yeah, I mean,
day,
this is what I'm
always
talking
looked
about.
forward
Like,
to reading Kay's articles. They were
yeah,
awesome.
awesome stuff, you know, like,
Absolutely. I
growing
mean, it holds out to
mediums.
today.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he had all the, I mean, it looks, by today's standards, you're like, what the hell? But,
What the hell, eh?
back then, we're like, it was amazing to have that, Trichome Tech Buds by K. Here you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So, mad respect, K, like, I don't know.
Definitely ahead of his
I always,
time.
and then here you are, buddy. Boom.
Yeah, that's this. That's the old pointillism, right here.
Yep.
The old
Yeah,
bubble
I
man
still have all
pointillism.
these magazines, man. It's amazing
Oh,
to
me
go back
too.
through them. Like
Me
the
too.
field, Morocco and
Yeah, dude. He could never go back after that last article he wrote on Mr. Big. Read that one. Holy shit. Talk about exposing a guy.
oh, dude,
Just
Speaking of it,
Yeah, dude, trust me. That's the soap bar story. That's a fucking crazy
shit.
article. Oh my God, dude.
Dude, check out Hemp News with the seed breeders' names. This is like that's Nirvana right in there.
I see Breeder Steve in the middle.
Oh yeah.
Spice of life.
Enterprise seeds. Oh yeah.
Where are you at, Fletch? Are you in Hawaii again? That's what I thought.
Yep, yep. A couple hours behind you.
Fuck yeah, dude. Okay, shit. No wonder. That's crazy. Hawaii is not easy to make hash church at 9 a.m.
I mean, unless you're really dedicated. I guess I'm not that dedicated.
We appreciate you showing up, dude.
Um, what's with the terpene extraction stuff? Did did that ever really? Okay, it took off a little bit for a minute, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of died off. And did anybody figure out basically the reason why? I mean, my perception was that it seemed like there was a small group of varieties that it worked well for, and then other varieties that didn't really hold on to the smell and flavor. Like I think Girl Scout cookies is a good example of a variety that kind of loses it in extraction. As soon as it gets heated up a little bit, it kind of loses the nuance of the flavor.
Yeah.
Where something like Lemon G or Super Silver Haze, they maintain it really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I, I was never there while it was happening, but what it seemed like was happening was that fresh frozen flour was being used to extract terps where the cannabinoids weren't really the focus at all. And it just the economics of it was insane unless you were growing fields of weed. I think also, when Kay says it was all hype, well, I think that that's not correct, but there was definitely hype involved in the sense that we were experiencing something new in the cannabis world. It was just this new thing that was kind of like the old terp dip, bong rip, double dip, bong rip. It was just fun. There was fun involved in turning new people on, like having a flavor of a dab on your lips for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes after you've taken the dab. I'd tell people, hey, lick your lips. And they'd give it a little lick and go, holy shit. There was a funness to that. And I'm not sure that it was beyond the most hardcores. The people that were the most hardcore at bioassay and growing and hash making, it wasn't for this new giant group of people who had an interest in trying a gummy or a beverage. But yeah, I don't know why. Because I guess it came and went because the industry clearly didn't want more of it.
I also think at the time, like most people didn't really know how to make hash the way that us here perhaps know how to make hash, and it was a real nice way to bring flavor to things that didn't have much of flavor. So I think it was exciting in those ways, but as it's evolved, it feels like you can capture those things along the linear process rather than have to deconstruct it so much. But there's definitely a place for it. I think, Terpene Belt Farms is one to call out, like what they've done essentially with their breeding projects is they've been able to kind of get a bucket system together of sorts. And like you said, like the lemon G's really work well, some of the sweet categories really work well, but largely the gas is a tough one. It's like really hard to nail when you're using steam distillation. From what I understand, it's the
Yeah.
sulfur compounds and those styles are very difficult. So you'd really want like a hydrocarbon.
Which would
um
speak volumes to what Fletch just said, right? Why are
yeah.
some of them not translating? Well, maybe some of them have more thiols and thiolates and long chain sulfur compounds that are more
Or more water
volatile and
solubles,
destroyed
right?
before they get through.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark just said it. They're water soluble, so it's hard to capture those notes at scale, but I think they do a good enough job, to get people the right ingredients so they don't have to use things that are coming from plants that aren't in the cannabis world, because there's a toxicology thing that is not really talked about at all with these, when we talk about terpenes and because we're talking about things that come from the plant, but a lot of people, maybe listeners out there, they don't know the difference between botanical and cannabis diverge, and that's also, I think, a big issue. because people are expecting profiles that on the shelf that sit next to each other, and some factually do come from a plant, and some are just constructed. And that's awesome that people can construct these things, but it's very difficult. Dr. Mark, maybe you can chime in on it, to be nature's chemist and get all of what's there.
Well, yeah, you
Um,
can't. You can't. And the other thing, there are two things that affect it. One thing is, yeah, the water solubles are going to be lost in steam distillation, right? They're stuck in the
Yeah.
sol, right? But the other thing is the amount, like when you smoke herb or when you smoke hash, the amount of terpenes are really small. And so if you have now a jar of terpenes, you're going to tend to probably use too much. And I think it was Ian, right, from Abstracts, Marcus, that was saying that especially with these canatropa sulfur kind of compounds, that you have to have it at the right ratio because if it's not, it'll taste like burnt rubber. Or if
And I
if
never
it's not
got
there
burnt
enough,
rubber. We were taking huge dips at
yeah,
one point, which was for
yeah,
sure way too much. And dude, it did
probably
not
way
taste
too
like burnt
much.
rubber. I also will add, I got a buddy hitting me up on Instagram right now, a dude that I met through Blue River selling terps. He just sent me a bunch of pictures of all of his old jars in his drawer. He said they still have residue and killer for a quick waft. He also said the lemon kush smells like the day I bought it. And I'm not lying. I have little jars that are the same way. This jar is probably like 8 years old. It smells fucking delicious.
Yeah.
Like, who's gonna deny that? That trips me out. Maybe they'll
Well,
make a comeback. Either way,
to
now we're
quote,
separating them and putting them in with diamonds and doing all of these other things. Go ahead, Dr. Mark.
yeah, I was just gonna say the quote, John Barlow, right? Too much of everything is just enough, right? So like if I don't know. In some cases, yeah, more isn't really going to potentiate, but more might give you again
The
5 minutes
poison makes
later,
the
lick your
dose.
lips, you're still going to taste it, right? But
Yeah,
it may have like a certain maximum at which it no longer potentiates the um, the cannabinoids like
it may.
THC, so it no longer potentiates it. So at that point, any excess you're getting is just again too much of everything.
That's it, man. Like I said, I always followed Skunkman Sam, and the fact that he just kept, hey, you got any more vials of those terps? I'm like, yeah, I'll send you some vials, dude. Absolutely. I just never thought of that guy to be a guy to want to smoke swag. He
Well,
always set the
let's
bar the highest.
put him in that bucket of people who likes drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, I'm with him. I am with him. That's awesome.
Buy
Well,
I,
it, motherfuckers.
I
I
got the
think that kind of
eucalyptus
also
terps.
plays into rosin too, where we have varieties that don't seem to translate as well. The heat kind of destroys or converts some of the compounds, and
Yeah.
I think that's why when you really ask, particularly people that spend a lot of time working with hash, the majority of them will tell you a really, really clean water hash extraction is their favorite product to consume. Uh,
Yeah.
just because it's the most true to type of the variety. I think that's why most people prefer it. Is it tastes like it tastes like it has not been adulterated in some way, whereas rosin and a lot of these other processes um, do degrade the product. Some in particular more than others. And that's maybe part of the preference of different types of extraction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is things that are good stick around, things that aren't move on. There's always these sort of trends that happen. It's so difficult to discuss the community as a whole because it's so many different pieces and your whole may be over here, but it's not the same as this person's whole. And there's some of us that are, putting a lot more attention into this. Like you said, people that are growing every day, people that are making hash every day. That's different from someone who's buying a pre-roll every day. They're just very, very different places to be. I'm just glad they all exist. I used to be a bit of well, maybe a lot of a snob in regards to just wanting everyone to have what I thought was the best. I kind of followed Sam's suit in that as well. But I got to a point of maturity where I was like, no, I will fight for all access points. Whatever it is, I just want people to have access to it. I don't want it to be super expensive. I don't want to put people out of business. I don't want, any of the negativity that comes with it, but I certainly love the idea of just more and more and more access for people to get cannabis in wherever they sit. Understand what I mean?
Well, I think I completely agree with you at this point because we're in a transition from lack of access to actually having access. But I think as time goes on, and I think we're seeing this in almost every, legal market, is that the bottom continues to move its way up, right? So what used to be beasters and brickweed is now, shitty indoor and what used to be no melt Nebraska is now 50 melt for $5 a gram, or the bottom keeps moving its way up, which means that the top has to continue to try to innovate itself to keep that gap and that distance. And I think to a certain degree we're running out of tricks to make pure more true to type extractions. I think the freeze dried rosin is about as close as you can get. There's not, I'm sure there is small bits of innovation that can happen in that process, but the gains are very minute to be had from this point going forward on the solventless products, it seems like, at least. And the the access to all this better equipment, really, and the access to information is really, you're seeing some really high quality hash for really cheap prices these days compared to just what it was 5 years ago.
It's true. And then when I look at these guys, I went with Ian Davidson, who was working with Segra, but prior to that, he had Davidson Organics, and he was growing for DNA and Burner and Cookies and all those guys before that. I went to a giant vegetable farmer here in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland. They have, like $150 million worth of infrastructure growing peppers and tomatoes, hothouse. And I just thought these motherfuckers are selling this shit for 15 cents a pound and still turning a profit. Like, where are we going wrong in the cannabis world?
I mean, are you sure that there's no public funding that's helping stand up some of those programs? Because what we're seeing in a lot of countries is that um, there's a lot of public assistance for agricultural producers. I mean, we just saw, what did Trump do? $12 billion that we just gave to farmers in America because of the results of the tariffs and everything else. So there's a lot of things in commercial agriculture that exist and make money today because of government assistance, not necessarily um, because it's a viable business on its own right in that specific area with the high cost of operation or labor or whatever else it is. A lot of the time with ag too, they may be like sitting on a natural gas well, and now they have free energy to be able to run this big greenhouse also off of. So I'm not
Well,
saying it's the case with that place. I'm just saying
no.
with a lot of commercial agriculture, it's good to keep that in mind and make sure that the business model that we're looking at isn't a publicly funded operation that allows it to be successful.
1,000%. I do not deny that at all, and we have a lot of subsidies in Canada, but hothouse cucumbers and tomatoes are not directly subsidized by the Canadian government, not in the form of production quotas, price supports, or per unit payments. We just don't have that. There are sectors of that you can access. These guys were just growing really beautiful tomatoes and cucumbers and somehow turning a profit. I just couldn't wrap my head around that they spent 150 million on greenhouses. Mojave, go ahead.
Well, I think there's two things at play, Marcus, that make it so that can be profitable for them. One is that the cost to produce cannabis is mostly on the regulatory burden, a prohibition artifact, right? So people who are growing weed for $150 a pound, over $100 of that is just noise that wouldn't exist if it were just a regular agricultural commodity, right? So the price could be way lower, which would create way wider margins for lower costs. Anyway, but the other thing is that The scalability of other crops, how much cucumbers the world consumes is a lot. How many tomatoes they consume? A lot. Cilantro, everything, just masses. So if you only make $1 a bushel of corn profit and you need to make $1 million, then you need to grow 1 million bushels, right? And it works. You see commodities where people like in California, alfalfa hay is, I think, a $2 billion a year industry. Hay, growing hay and selling hay for feed, right? So with cannabis, you can't scale it up. That's what we learned in California. You can't just scale it up and assume that there's someone there to buy more cannabis if you just grow more cannabis because you make less this year. So if your margin's thin exponentially over and over again, what do you need to do? You need to grow more acres to assume that space, the same way the cucumber and the cilantro guy does it. But with cannabis, it's a finite amount of space you need. There's a finite amount of customers. There's all the regulatory burden. There's limited access to international or interstate or all that. So then you end up stuck. And there's no way out of it other than all of the shackles being removed. But the problem is you remove all the shackles. Now, a few groups who are good at what they do, and they could be organic, regenerative farmers, whatever, can literally just grow the bulk of the supply for everybody. It's not like corn where you just need to have a huge amount of it grown all over the place because the supply chain requires this a massive amount. So we're kind of stuck in this thing where the family farmer, the future for the family farmer in cannabis, honestly, is kind of grim in terms of you're not going to be able to be just a small acreage guy who produces enough money to feed your family unless you've got something really, really different, a process or genetics or something to increase the value. Otherwise, you're stuck in this commodity lane. And that place, cannabis doesn't match other agricultural commodities. So it just doesn't fit, unfortunately. And we didn't think, I don't think any of us thought that way for decades because we all just looked at the cost, the prohibition cost, and we put cannabis up with cucumbers because we assumed like, holy shit, like people make so much, the value is so high, it must be the same. But there's not a bunch of tractors that need to be built. So there's not subsidies. There's not tens of thousands of jobs of people harvesting and all that stuff. So there's not subsidies for wages. There's not subsidies for companies, all of that. It's not the same. It's really closer to like poppies or tulips or orchids or some type of specialty crop that really just exists on the supply side in a very small sector. I mean, all the world's opiates come from just a few people who make all the opiates to be distributed to millions and millions and millions of people. So it's like, that's really to be perfectly honest, that's the future for cannabis as well, if it gets normalized.
Crazy. It'll all just come from one little island. Just be like
Maybe.
pumping. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
that's
hoping
the plan.
terroir becomes a thing, that terroir becomes a thing, and that gives value to everyone who has terroir. You grow your unique terroir and then you export it in the flavor profiles of your plants.
But that doesn't address scale. So the whole thing is like, how many people can exploit the terroir of a local region to say, like, my company is going to say, hey, we've got this amazing terroir, and we're going to be the only people who can capitalize on it because it's exclusive. Well, that's not right. You're all in Humboldt or you're all in Santa Barbara. You're all in the same terroir. You have to share that as a collective, the same way wine people do through an appellation. But then you're limited to how many businesses can function within that appellation and within even that terroir.
I guess it depends on how popular that appellation and terroir becomes worldwide.
Exactly. And that's the key. And that's the key. And I mean, look at France. France had a huge, they capitalized off of selling terroir and the legacy and the tradition until California said, well, I think we got pretty good terroir. And then Australia said, I think we got good terroir too. And then South Africa said, we got good terroir. And then Argentina said, we got good terroir. And then Chile said, we got good terroir. And they all made really, really good wine. And it's really good. And did they all elevate up to Chateau Lafite? No, they didn't, but they did claw away a lot of the business from those farmers in France as well.
Prosecco would like to talk to you, and sparkling wine would like to talk to you as well.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's weird. And then the weird thing is, like, as that was happening in wine, they were stealing the names and the legacy through Bordeaux and Champagne and Burgundy. And in California, you drink jug wines of Burgundy. And the French are like, what do you mean? That's not Burgundy. It's not from Bourgogne, France. You can't just take our legacy and mass scale this thing. And you guys don't even have the right terroir to say that you did that because we have this system. So it really, it's challenging. And then the whole Appalachian terroir thing is also tied to land intrinsically. So it takes away the ability to grow in greenhouses, under lights, in pots, containers, all of that. You've got to be really true to the regenerative thing that is the air, the sun, the soil, the water at that land. So I always sound like a naysayer, but it's a real double-edged sword any way you take it, where, like in California, and Caleb understands this very well, like working with all these different advocacy groups to try and get farmers to believe in the future around Appalachian and stuff like that. There's a little bit of a misdirection in that how that's going to look in 10 years is very different than the way we're talking about it now. And it's for most people, it just doesn't apply. And that's the hard pill, is that most businesses, most models, they don't fit into these future cannabis commerce industrialization models. And that's why, back to the whole thing, as long as they let us grow our plants in the backyard and share it with our friends, to me, we won this whole thing. And we all might have lost out on some opportunities for business, but we all won in terms of advocates for the plant, however it
So you
plays
don't believe that there could be a world where, because, like, let's be real, square footage does matter. There is such a thing as too small, right? To your point. And you know, but I wonder often, like what happened in wine and is still continuing to happen in that world, consumers do need and want exactly what Marcus laid out. People and producers that do have a specific product that they bring to market in, the region that they're from. And I don't know. I wonder, when the walls come down and there's free enterprise, you'd freedom to buy, what people are gonna, put their back pocket forward with, like what, why
well,
not it be terroir? I
well,
guess
no,
is the better.
I agree, but my point is, and I've had this conversation with guys who work in wine appellation systems as well, is like, when you say that,
Yeah.
for specifically, like when you talk about terroir and you talk about appellation, then for
Mm,
one, just to the point of, you'd have to eliminate all the other forms of production that don't apply. Bring
sure.
it, because it is about soil and it is about light and it is about
Yep.
humidity and stuff.
Genetics,
Genetics,
yeah.
exactly. So, but I'm not saying it
Sure.
won't be the future. It'll
Mhm.
100% future. It'll be the way it is. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't apply to most people, and it still is a limited market in terms of how you can elevate your brand. Like in California this year, we had a huge wine glut, and they just left billions and billions of grapes on the vine to rot this year, because they're already experiencing in wine the same issues that we're experiencing in cannabis, which is, you can't just keep planting more as the margins thin.
Sure.
You just can't keep doing it. And you can't all be the guy who has that app, that has that chateau thing with that beautiful story. Most of the people who grow wine grapes just grow them to sell to somebody who crushes them and puts them in their bottle. It's
So it
kind of,
goes back to, like, I guess, like, what I'm hearing from you, like, indirectly, is like the systems matter more than, like, anything else. Like, how quickly can they replace the bottle after it's sold, and, like, can those buyers rely on them? At the end of the day, it's no different than
well, it's how many
any other
jobs, it's how many jobs,
commodity, which
how
is
many
shitty to
jobs
say.
Well, it's how many
You
jobs
know,
does cannabis can it sustain? Because we're all, I mean, I was raised on cannabis money. My family is raised on cannabis money. Like, it's been our whole life. Like, every calorie that my kids have eaten has come from the sale of cannabis. And so indirectly, one way or the other, not through me, but as a consultant or as a grower or whatever. So it's about the sustainability of people's livelihood. And the reality is, most of the jobs in the current cannabis thing are based off of this artifact of prohibition. And when you start looking at a future normalization model in terms of production, distribution, all of that, international, you realize that most of the jobs contract with the price compression, that
Right.
they're not really going to be there. And that's the hard pill that I'm trying to say is like when you compare it to other ag crops, where you can go online and say, well, how many jobs does an acre of corn sustain?
Right.
How many jobs does an acre of soybeans or cucumbers? How many jobs are there? What's the average wage? Blah, blah, blah. With cannabis, it's been this massive collapse, but that's the story of the collapse of the artificially inflated price of a
Right.
plant. That's really
Yep.
easy to grow.
As we touched on like way earlier. Yeah. No,
Well,
you're right.
it's also the story of industrial production of an ag commodity, right? It's like that's really what it is you turn it from one guy, one person producing 100 square feet to one person per 2 acres now or whatever it is. And it's that industrial scale of production that compresses the price and gets rid of all the jobs and gets rid of all the small businesses and everything else, which is why even 15 years ago, I always advocated for the best thing for legal cannabis is one very simple law: square footage cap on production. So each license can only do, let's call it 1,000 square feet of production. If they had done that, there would have been no corporate investment because what's the maximum revenue of 1,000 square feet of production? Not a whole lot. Almost every illegal grower would try to get into the legal business because it's only small guys. It's only 1,000 square foot guys maximum. That's it. No one ever has too much production because you only got 1,000 square feet. It's literally the same thing as what farmers unions do to keep ag crop prices high up. Is hey, and we're going to split up based on the amount of acreage you own. Here's how much everybody's going to grow. And that would have been the only real solution to the problem that we have now. And like you said, prohibition was that square footage cap, right? It was the police preventing you from growing too many square feet. And therefore, you had a very diverse, massive business that sustained thousands and tens of thousands of jobs per state, uh, just to supply small scale, home grow production to supply an entire industrial demand.
Yeah, if you look at Salinas County and you think that they were drunk on square footage and taxes, how many dollars per square foot they got. So let's issue lots of square footage to anyone we can. And now there's like this big crash in revenue from like all the cops and the fire department and the schools were like, hey man, we were getting a lot of money from you cannabis guys like 2 years ago. And now it's like, well, they're all gone. They're all gone. There's just a few left. They're all failed as business models because nobody really thought it out. It's weird, it's
We
almost
all built we all built the airplane while flying it, right? Some of us, well, all right, none of us had plans. All right, none of us had plans how to build the airplane properly. Okay, let's us just state that. We were all a bunch of activists who had ideas, utopian concepts of what we envisioned, okay? And what we envisioned is not what we see, but what we envisioned was never going to be a reality anyway, because it was never based in reality the same way that prohibition is not based in reality. It's based on bullshit. And that bullshit has kept us spinning because, right? Why was the price of pot and everything all high? Right? Because we danced around prohibition. It was the cost of prohibition. It was why was Colin, you said 8,500 pounds. Why are we paying $8,500 a pound? Because we were risking our motherfucking freedom to actually do this shit. We got caught. We went directly to jail. There was no pay $200. You were lucky to find a lawyer. You were stuck with, 9 times out of 10, a public fucking defender. Okay. No one was rich. No one was utopian. There was no Elon Musk with a concept of an idea of an idea, right? It only got penetrated because Dennis Perone got tired of watching all of his friends dying on him in San Francisco and said, fuck this shit. I'm just going to open it up and see what the hell happens. Okay. There's the first architect, and he didn't even know what he was doing. He built it by the fucking seat of his pants. And what did we all do? We jumped in right with him, and then they kicked him out. And we're like, we're just going to continue doing what he did, right? And that's basically what happened, especially as early ones. And what else did we do? We said, okay, here's my door. It is open to you. I'm not going to charge you. You come here and you learn what we do. And we did. We taught countless people all over the country how to do a dispensary, right? They're based on our model, which is a pretty vanilla fucking model on how to, get cannabis, distribute it to local people so that they grow the cannabis and then it comes back to you for you to sell it. None of us ever envisioned corporations running a whole bunch of mid-grade cannabis, right? We were all with the idea that we were all going to, what we saw kind of with 215, a whole bunch of people growing small batch cannabis, being able to sell it for a livable wage and, continue on doing what they did. And they got so used to it that over time the price has changed, right? It changed from the 8,500 down to 7, then to 6, down to 45, down to 32, then now it's what, $100.
But
I can
ATM, the other thing I want to say is like I remember a time when I went down to Salinas to this farm that was extremely large at the time, and we were consulting a little bit, and I was there just to buy actually material for fresh frozen, and we were assessing it. And what I recognized even then, and I'm thinking about it now as you talk, is like, dude, they put plants in before they even had the roof over the head of these plant over
correct.
over the plants, and like they had like I have photos that I look at from that day still, and I just laugh. I'm like, they had packed as many plants as they could on into these tables, and it just was a mess.
Oh,
Drip
we got
emitters all over, all
144.
entangled, and
In Oakland, we were allowed
we.
144 plants in a 4x8 area. Yeah, they were kind of stacked on each other.
So my point was like, and this was like the large, this was 64 whenever, everyone was rushing to get infrastructure, and they didn't really understand what infrastructure even meant at the time. And because nobody had actually grown cannabis at that scale commercially in under rules and regs, right? Like we have to remind ourselves. I was being tasked with people being like, "Can you find someone to run, 12,500 square feet?" I'm like, "Do you realize that there's probably 5 guys that I even maybe even know that could say they've ever even done that?" And that's the other thing that we forget is like the scale we shoehorn this thing like big time from an ag perspective.
Well,
And
well,
that feels wrong looking back. I think if we had just been a little bit smarter and not rushed so much towards this imaginative P&L, then I don't know, maybe we'd have a stronger industry and business as a result,
but the
you know?
irony is that the reason Glasshouse backdoors all their product or a lot of their product, so I've heard, I don't know, but so the rumors tell me, but is because that model and literally it's not they knew that the only way to profit was through interstate commerce, the same way the tomatoes that came out of the facility before them did.
Right.
Back to Marcus's point, the only
Yeah.
way that works, right? And they knew that. And same, even honestly, I think there's even in an article about the collapse of Salinas tax revenue that when stateside and D'Angelo pushed and killed the price cap, the cap on in California, they did that and they built that infrastructure in Salinas because they actually thought Salinas was going to feed the nation the same way it does with vegetables. It wasn't for internal California. They
He was on
really
Vice saying that, I think. I believe. I remember there's an art
100%.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
the push at 64 was like, okay, we vote on this thing in 2016, we implement it in 2018. By 2020 or so, we're looking at interstate commerce or 2024 or something, because it has to be moving this direction nationally. Otherwise, all these models don't work for large scale cannabis, especially in a state that already grew enough weed already. Right. So it's like, to me, this was a failure, not necessarily a failure of having the foresight to know whether or not they needed a roof or whether or not they needed the infrastructure. It's the failure to push the cannabis agenda all the way through so that ag models can work, interstate
Yeah.
commerce can work. And then all these people who were a little bit ahead of the curve and said, like, hey, I'm going to buy in, they fucked it up because now they have to feed the trap market, or they have to feed, the shitty weed market, or they just fail as an industry altogether and start growing cilantro again.
Yeah, I mean, the most of the older heads that I know that have been, they're kind of like not tapped out, but just kind of like, you know, on fire, that are, 2 decade age older than I am. They all thought it would be wrapped up and gone, done. Like everything you're saying, Mojave, would have already happened and it would have been pushed all the way to the point of legalization. And you're right, the model and those systems would actually work.
The,
So.
the thing that we know about industrial agriculture, though, is that it doesn't work anywhere that you have to pay real like wage labor costs. That's why everything is done offshore, or it has to be subsidized. I mean, there's probably no agricultural crop in California that would survive without A, federal subsidies, and B, interstate commerce. Period.
And
It's
C,
like
Mexicans.
nothing, not almonds,
How
not
about that?
not anything.
Let's not forget the Mexicans.
Well, without their labor, that wouldn't be possible as well.
It wouldn't.
And so, but like even with their labor as cheap as it is comparatively, it's still those companies still couldn't afford to pay illegal workers without subsidies and farmers unions and whatever crop you're talking about. It all needs assistance because it's too easy to grow too much all at once. And the real fact is just that we have to recognize that industrial agricultural does not work. And the only solution there ever was, if you wanted to have a robust market like there was in cannabis before with prohibition, was to cap square footage. There's no industrial model that works. If there were, there'd be some other crop you could point to for me that industrial production of it worked out well for the farmers and all the small workers and ended up in a robust small market. It's like that doesn't exist. The only market that exists like that is farmers markets. That's it. And so the only real solution was production caps. And what's funny is, you know, exactly 10 years ago, there was one company that entered the cannabis space that spent an inordinate amount of money investing in it, right? And I told them this is exactly what was going to happen 10 years ago. And it was going to collapse the businesses that they were buying, the hydroponics industry, around them. And the only thing that was going to essentially save the cannabis industry at that point, in my opinion, would have been a significant lobbying effort to have production caps. That would have been the only solution there was. Without that, any model that allowed industrialized production was going to end up in this situation no matter what.
Yeah, there's no infrastructure, no understanding of what that infrastructure was or is, because none of us came from that industrialization. We all came from small, communal grows tops, right? None of us were really pushing the cartel limits, right? The cartels were the really ones growing the large scale,
There's
some
enough
were
business for everybody. That's what
correct.
everybody would say back then. And it's like, no, there isn't actually. I remember guys saying, you could grow as much OG as you possibly want and it'll never be enough. And I was like, you guys are completely wrong. I promise you, you're wrong. That may be the situation today, but it takes 3 months to grow the plant. And if once you have competition in the marketplace, the only place with the supply increasing, there's only one place for price and demand to go, and that's down.
Yeah.
But
Well, somehow we're still getting food.
True.
Somehow we're still getting weed, and somehow there's still a lot of underground weed going and growing, so it's not stopping.
Not much. I mean, like look, I feel like the hydroponic stores is the best example of how much black market weed is being grown. And I would bet in Oregon and Washington and even California at this point, I'd say at least 60 to 70% of the grow shops are closed, if not more. It's more up in Washington and
It's
Oregon,
more
but
than
just
that. We
it's
used to
more than
have
yeah.
that.
14 in the Bay Area. Now they're consolidated like two or three tops.
Yeah,
All
they're
the
rare
mom and
here.
pop stores that used to gouge us, remember the extra 30% for you new 49er gold miners, as they would call us? Yeah, they gouged us to the point where all of us, when we realized, oh, I can just order from Amazon now, fuck off.
Yeah, and it does. That's. I'm not sure if if it's a complete reflection of the illicit market, but it definitely does reflect it. And but the one thing I know from knowing a few guys who still own shops down in Southern California, they all their business comes from a few illicit grows. Like they have two or three guys who don't want to shop online because they're too scared or whatever, or they got just a better deal. They said, look, dude, I'll always guarantee you a better deal than anywhere else you can get it. Just come through me. And like they are 90% of their business. And all the guys who had like, 10 to 20 lights, they're all gone completely. And anybody who has less than 20 lights or so, they're just buying stuff online because it's usually cheaper. But no, it has gone away. It really has. It's crazy. But that should have been one of the first, if this had been approached the right way, the proliferation of like the Green Coast, like 10,000 square foot warehouses happened right as 64 was fucking signed in, right? So it's like, how can you have like in Holland right away, they restrict the grow supplies to having like one or two lights in the whole place because they said, oh no, if you have more than that, then you're supplying the illicit market. You're not a hobbyist. But we had this like massive like supply chain directly with like 10,000 square foot, you know, and then over time they all were just filled with Athena, which was pretty gross, which was like, wait, you guys used to have like 30 different nutrient companies. Now you've just got like walls of Athena and then all the other stuff like over in the corner. So clearly you're just there for the larger scale illicit grow. Um, but yeah, that's another one of those jobs. Like, how many jobs does this industry sustain and for why? And how many of those, when you start looking back and say, why do those grow shops even exist? I mean, I remember when you used to have to drive for like hours to go to the farm supply place because there's only like three places in the state that sold whatever ingredient you were trying to get. And then all of a sudden someone said, whoa, people are driving hours for this shit. I can just open a shop here in LA and charge more for it. And, the next thing you know, there's 30 shops in LA over the next 10 years, right? Those jobs were created out of thin air. Boom, you know. And then we find out that all the stuff that they were selling was kind of the same shit you can get from the farm supply, just in a different bottle or a slightly different formula. And,
At a quarter the price.
at a quarter the price, you know. So it's all, I mean, it all comes down to prohibition to me. And like a lot of us who got into the industry were in it, to support ourselves, to support our families. It's not like we didn't like to get paid, but we definitely did it for a slightly different reason. And we could have survived with a smaller, caps on square footage and caps on production and try to maintain that. But I mean, we're in the Amazon world where none of that, no, that's like socialism in the modern world to talk like that, to not let the free market just fucking roll over any mom and pop industry. So
Well, even those mom and pop industries that we're all grieving that are disappearing now, like back then they were like, man, the prices on that shit was so high. It was like we were all getting raped and kind of just happy about it. We're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of water, that has been shipped across the country, and I'm gonna pay three times the price for these lights that you would if you were just buying them wholesale from the actual producer." And it was the same for everything. So I'm not trying to say I
No,
wasn't a part of
we
it.
We didn't talk to the
Production
producer
caps.
or anybody like that. We were too terrified, right? We were all trying to be discreet. I remember
Mm.
I thought it was so fucking cool. I finally had all my shit. I went to a place in San Jose.
Mm.
I bought literally like 1,200 gallon containers, okay, which is for water things. And I'm paying in cash and we're talking blah blah blah. I'm talking regular farm stuff. And I thought I had my shit together and I pulled out my goddamn wallet and it had said, it had the I grew hemp on it. And the guy's like, "Oh, that's a nice strong fiber. You got wallet there." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, God
Exposed
damn it."
yourself.
I busted my own self with a fucking wallet. I mean, of all goddamn things, shit. So, as much as you try, I remember in '89, I went because Operation Green Merchant had happened. I went to Ohio from West Virginia to Columbus to buy a light and parked a mile away from the fucking store because I was afraid I was going to get a picture taken. And then we drove around and all around to make sure we weren't followed. This is just the paranoia is fucking real, people. And so we weren't thinking about large scale future and what was all possible industrial growth. We're just trying to save our own asses. You know
Just
what
trying
I'm
to stay out
saying?
of prison. I'll
Right?
tell you, I was
Y'all remember
lucky.
those days, right? The
No,
just the
I was
paranoia
lucky.
over buying your equipment.
I was lucky because Ron Hickey, who was my one of my first mentors, he had just done 6 years in prison in a federal penitentiary for cannabis. And when he got out, he decided, I'm going to open up a hydroponic store education center called Nature's Nutrition. He had a huge book area. He was always there. And you'd walk in. I walked in there at 17 years old, dude. And I was like, hey, man, like, I'm just trying to grow some tomatoes. And he's like, tomatoes? Come on, we're not growing tomatoes. I know exactly what you're growing. Let's talk about what you're growing. And this guy would just like put it all out there. And I'm talking in the Bible Belt of Canada, bro. Like, you go to federal penitentiary if you get caught growing this shit. And he literally taught our entire city. He taught fucking motorcycle gangs how to do it. He taught anyone that would listen. He was screaming it from the mountaintops. And in fact, he did it so much. This is the guy that ended up in prison for another 6 years because while he was doing that, they said, why don't we send in this woman to pretend to have cancer and tell him that she needs to get cannabis. And he ended up, giving her 4 or 5 pounds over the course of a certain amount of time. And that got him 5.5 years in prison. And when he went to do the prison time, he was in prison with her husband who had murdered 2 people with an axe. And it was his first time out in the yard. And this is when he found out that she actually ratted on Ron to get this guy yard time for the first time in like 8 years or something because he had been in the hole the whole time. He was a psychopath. He wasn't allowed out in the yard. And so Ron did his entire 5.5 years with this fucking axe murder, double. And just had to kind of be like, oh well, whatever. Yeah, I'm glad you got some yard time now, I guess. Like pretending to have cancer to get this guy to sell or give them weed, which I almost guarantee you he gave it to her. I bet you he would not have charged her whatsoever. But that's who was my original mentor, Ron Hickey. This guy did not give a fuck. He put 2,000-watt HPS lights in the front window of his fucking store and he blinded everyone that drove by that store. You could not look at his store in the late 80s and the early 90s when those lights were blaring out of the front window there. So shout out to Ron Hickey and all the OGs for not giving a fuck. Thank you. That's
That's
where I
awesome.
grew up.
You had to be cavalier, right? Yeah, that's the thing is that, it's as we're sitting here looking at 2020 hindsight, right?
We used to buy
Why was
lights in other states and never
right?
in the same state, you know. Like you, Marcus, I would go to this spot that was called Indoor Outdoor Gardener in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and this guy Peter had his own soil blend that he did. And his wife and him, Helena, we used to wait until like they were just about to close, and then he'd be like, "All right, boys, what do you need?" And he would like he'd take us around. He'd be like, "You need this and that," and then he would like put it all in black trash bags for us, and we'd like piecemeal it out of there, and like, 3 of us would go in different directions, and then all meet up at a different spot. Because yeah, you had to be sneaky, man. It
Hey,
wasn't.
everybody! I brought in Michael Crowitz because I wanted we were discussing earlier about CBD and descheduling and all that, and Michael is part of that history, so he would like to correct us and at least set us straight on some of that because it actually goes to the work that they were doing at the UN. So, Michael Crowitz, welcome, and can you help correct our understanding?
Yeah, by the time I'm done, I don't know how much it'll seem like a correction, but uh, I do think there's a bit of the history that needs to be understood to have a better understanding of where what happened and how it happened. Before I have no idea what you were just talking about, and I apologize so much for coming in the middle. I just have to say, coming in on a black bag story, I asked a friend of mine for a joint in Hawaii, and he said, "Oh, I've got some weed in my storage unit." He opens up his storage unit, it had a black hefty bag. And at that time, the Hawaiian weed, this is before Operation Green Harvest, and they had some phenomenal outdoor green weed in before Green Harvest. And he had a hefty bag of just leftovers. They would take, they trim their bud and whatever's left over, they just put out at the dump in a hefty bag, and he would take one home for, spare weed. So I had a, 55-gallon trash bag of little ends of buds and some of the best Hawaiian weed to roll my joint out of. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that story. But yeah, all right. So what happened? In a nutshell, the bits and pieces of about Epidiolex, and about the patients in the United States that pushed the FDA to do trials on a kind of an adaptation of a import license for under duress, medical necessity, import license, and drug testing, special drug testing of a product that was in testing, already in the UK, Epidiolex, and that resulted in FDA approval, and FDA made its own determination that Epidiolex should be certainly not seen as a drug of abuse. So they sent it over to the DEA, and the DEA came back. This is 2000, before 2018, coming up to 2018. The DEA came back to the FDA and said, "Well, we agree with your findings. We have no evidentiary argument, except it's still considered by us to be a tincture or extract of cannabis as per the treaty obligations. We can't get away from that. And what that causes us to do as a DEA within our Controlled Substances Act, it calls on us to schedule it somewhere, basically. So they put it in Schedule 5. It had to be in a schedule because it was still seen as an extract and still under treaty control. And 2019, 2020, we had the wrap up of the big process. It was a 5-year process in Geneva with the World Health Organization, of which one whole year was dedicated to CBD. We had hearings. Our little team of activists brought in the hemp movement this time. Previously in 2015, 16, and 18, we brought in the medical cannabis movement. And the WHO worked with us and actually tried to fix this. They put a note into the treaty, at least tried to. This is a very unprecedented thing. They have scheduling authority, but they sent back a note and they said to the treaty body, if you wish, put this into the treaty as a clarifying note. And what did the note said? It said that CBD shouldn't be a subject of a subject of control because it's not a subject of abuse. Basically, you can read the note. It's a matter of historical record of the note that they put forward. It's also a matter of historical record that the UN declined to put that into the treaty. They didn't do that, but they did remove cannabis from Schedule 4 of the treaty, and it's very clear based on the actions of the DEA that convinced them to go back to the drawing board on Epidiolex and relent on allowing it to be descheduled. I make it a clarification on the the lobbying by special interests, because there was nothing to lobby for. I mean, at that moment, there was no rescheduling petition. There was nothing before the DEA to really particularly lobby for. Now, there may have been lobbying by corporate interests behind the scenes that we didn't see at the international level, But that note didn't pass. I mean, if there was any clear focal point for corporate lobbying, it would have been on the note itself, which we didn't work on. We didn't really care much about getting that put into the treaty. Really weren't sure really what it would even mean if we did get into the treaty. So that failed. So that to me is pretty strong evidence. A sort of circumstantial case, I guess you'd say, Marcus, that there was no corporate lobbying hand that put CBD. And a final note, we just were clarified by a member of our team, again, just a little cannabis activist team at the UN level, not really connected to the grass tops or the movement funding. And one of our members of our team is a former member of the International Narcotics Control Board, and they clarified their position after that in 2023, telling all countries that they should do the same thing, that they shouldn't consider CBD, even if it's got a small amount of THC, which I thought was fascinating, because they left that to the discretion of the countries as to what would be a manageable amount of THC in the CBD and still be using for medicine, but not be controlled. So anyway, in the USA, we have all the complications from hemp, and that raises whole other issues. But I think that kind of sums up the history.
Well, thanks for sharing, brother. We appreciate you. I was trying to figure out if that was you in the chat earlier. I had asked, but then I had asked Etienne as well, and he, I guess, didn't see the chat. I probably should have asked it in here instead of on Messenger on the phone, but always glad to keep the people straight. We're super, I mean, listen, for me, that was 4 hours. I got to go take care of my wife. She's feeling a little under the weather because I brought home the plague and then gave it to her. So I think it's a little bit of my responsibility to make sure that I take care of her for a little bit today. I do want to thank our sponsors, Puffco and Bubble Bags and the Press Club for, giving your support to Hash Church and the community here. I think that's the final puff on today's show right there, from the long overdue cracks in Schedule 1's iron grip to the quiet revolution brewing if cannabis steps into Schedule 3, or maybe it'll be terrible. I don't know. I'm not pretending to say either way. After listening to people talk about it for 4 hours, I have no idea how this is all going to play out. I do know that I'm in it for life and I'll just be enjoying cannabis the whole way through. Let's hope it becomes more and more and more and more and more accessible for everyone, because I think that's what we all want in the end. I'm with Sam. I don't give a fuck who profits. It'd be nice if we did. That'd be cool, but I don't really give a fuck. I'm more interested in the access for everyone. Thank you everyone for watching today. We had a good group in chat, as always, such a good core group. I think there was over 300 people in there for most of the day. So thank you guys for watching. We will be back next Sunday. It'll be our 51st episode. We are only 2 episodes away from completing a full year of Hash Church, which to me, that feels like something, man. 52 episodes, a lot happens in a year. You really figure it out when when you have this Sunday to join. And it's so important that you take the Sabbath off and join and dialogue in Hash dialogue with your brothers and sisters. And that's what we do here on Hash Church. We're here every Sunday, and we're glad that you show up for us as well. It was really nice to have Michael show up at the end. It was really nice to have Mojave and Fletch on today. And of course, all the regulars. We appreciate you. Let's do it again next Sunday. May the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. Peace out, everybody.